or go in a totally different direction, this is y'all's conversation. This is all about you guys today. So please be keeping in mind what I can do or what you want me to give you more information with so that you feel best served at the end of the day. Does that sound fair? Say yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So a little bit about me. My name is Armstrong. I am in the Nashville, Tennessee Market Center. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. I moved to Nashville in 1999 to go to a small school there called Belmont University. And I graduated in 2003. And I've been doing real estate ever since. I told the group this morning that I graduated in May. I got my license in June. So I am uniquely qualified to do nothing other than real estate. That's what I found my one thing. Unfortunately, I have built no other skills, so I guess that's good retention for me from a standpoint of I'm not going to go off and do anything else. A little bit about me getting started since I was, yes ma'am.
What is your degree in?
Business. I have a business major. I worked in the music industry while I was in college. Worked for a small Christian record label while I was there and did some artist management through Belmont. Belmont has a big music business program. And I got out and all of my friends were working like 60 hours a week to make $22,000 or $23,000 a year. And I said, gosh, there has to be a better way than this. This can't be the only way. And I had a family member that had been in real estate, and I learned a little bit about it just from talking to them. And it is the great thing about our industry is it is one of the few things that you can do with a high school diploma, at least in Tennessee. I know we're a little more backwoods than maybe you guys are in Atlanta. But with the high school diploma, no real capital. You don't have to go out and buy a bunch of inventory or sign a big lease or anything like that. And still build as big of a business and as big of a world as you possibly can imagine. So for me, that's what attracted me to real estate. I was 22 years old when I got my real estate license. But you can imagine my friends were not quite ready to be purchasing properties. Most of them couldn't even afford the rent on their own without their parents. I wasn't from Nashville, so I didn't have a big sphere of influence. And I went to my dad and I said, hey, I want to get into the real estate business. And I had a little bit of savings saved up, and I was living in, I could get by off of next to nothing at that point in my life. But I knew that I was going to need about $10,000 to get my license, to pay for all of the initial costs, to get cards, to get some signs, to affiliate with the brokerage, to start marketing myself and give myself enough runway that I could get enough deals to then, I could live off of about half a deal a month at that point. So I knew it wouldn't take me, I didn't have an extravagant lifestyle, but I knew I was going to need that. And so I sat down with my father and he said, I showed him my plan and we talked about how long I would need. And he said, well, I agree. I think this is a good plan. I think that you're gonna need this, and I'm gonna loan it to you. And here's the interest rate that I'm currently making on this money right now, where I have it sitting either in a savings account or invested. And unfortunately, that's what interest rates. You could get more than 0.1% on your savings account interest rate at that point. So it wasn't the best time for me to be taking out that loan. And he said, and here's a promissory note that I want you to sign. I didn't have anything really to offer as collateral at that point. But other than my relationship with my dad, I guess, not that he would have disowned me at that point, but it was a loan. Like here's the repayment terms. I'm going to let you wait, X number of months to start repaying it, and then you're going to pay this month off. And he would tell you now that it is one of the better investments that he's ever made. It was the last dollar that I had ever taken from my father. It was all paid off in just under a year, in much shorter period of time. And now when we get together as a family, I am the one that pays for everything. I take the family out to dinner. I pay when we go on trips. I do all that sort of stuff. So I'm working hard to pay all the things back. So that is a little bit about kind of my upbringing in the industry, just so that you know right now. I'll show you guys a copy of my organization chart a little bit later, but including me on my sales team, we have 20 people. 9 in production agents. The rest are either admin or marketing or inside sales, and I'll show you guys how that breaks down a little bit later. Last year we did 253 transactions, just over 70 million in sales volume, and we did $2.4 million in commissions in 2016. So far in 2017, I think at the end of this month we'll have closed 108 transactions. We'll have done 39 million, and we've already done $1,150,000 in commissions so far in 2017. So I don't say any of that to impress you. I just want you to know kind of the perspective that I'm coming from, the level that my business currently is at, And as we'll talk about today, the reason that my business is at that level is because I have failed my way there. I have made numerous mistakes. I've screwed stuff up as bad as it can be screwed up. And I realized early on that that's what success looks like. You fail your way forward, and as long as you don't quit, you're not a failure.
And recently, you became an OP.
I recently became an OP of 2 market centers, which has been probably the biggest challenge of my professional career. I have great respect for an operating principal.
Operating partner of a market center.
We have 2 market centers, yep. In the Nashville area, I'm learning a ton from that. It's a whole different skill set. It's been a great opportunity for me to do. And then you asked me to tell a little bit from
Well, and hold on, because I want to tell them so they know that this is cool, okay? You're a flagship market center, which means you're one of the top in the company, right? So he invited his team leader to come and shadow you for the day. Spent the day with the team, got to know us. What are y'all doing? Ask questions. And then in return, Aaron said, hey, I want to come teach for you. So I love telling that story to you because I want you to understand, like, this is a cool place to be where people in Nashville are going, hey, go see First Atlanta. Go see First Atlanta. So it's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and John was amazing. The team leader and one of the new team leaders that we just hired, one of the market centers, came back and was just blown away with the operation that you guys run here and the agents and the culture and
it's easy when they're talented like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess just a little bit more about me. I am married. I've been married for 6 years. In March, we have 2 children. I have a 4-year-old little boy, Owen, and a little girl who will be 2 in August. Her name is Vida. And that is a big part of what we do outside of work. I love to spend time outdoors. I just finished my first triathlon last month, and it's a goal for me to do a little bit more of that. I'm really big into health. I love to cycle. I had never ran or swam before I started training for this. I mean, other than running around for my kids. I could swim, but I wasn't a swimmer. So it's all been a new skill set. So that's kind of a new thing. And then we just bought a farm. We just bought 100 acres with half-mile of riverfront, about a mile outside of Nashville. And so that's kind of our big family thing right now. Is that's where we go on the weekends. We live. How many of you guys have been to Nashville or are familiar with the city? I know a lot of you guys. So it's an awesome city. Yeah. We live right downtown in East Nashville, same side of the river as where the stadium is, in a really cool area called 5 Points. And so we've got this real great, walkable, fun neighborhood. That's cool. And then we bought this place to kind of have the dichotomies. And that was a big goal of ours that since before my wife and I were married, that's something that she wanted. And becoming an OP and as our team has grown, that's one of those things that we were able to fulfill this year. So something that we're really excited and proud of.
And then last thing I want to, and then I'm going to sit down and get out of your way. But one of the things that I've heard people say about leadership and how to grow your leadership of yourself is the people you hang out with and the books you read. And you're exactly the same person you are today as you'll be in 5 years, with that exception. Who am I hanging out with? What am I reading? So who do you hang out with? You're in a very select group, actually 2 select groups.
I think probably the biggest opportunity that I've had in my professional career, the thing that I'm most grateful for, and that's had the biggest impact on both my business and my life, is I'm fortunate enough to be a part of Gary Keller's Top Agent Group, which is a group of a few hundred agents from around the country that meet quarterly. And then last year, Gary created another group that's primarily based off of expansion, but really leadership and expansion. And it's called the Pirate Group. And I was telling the group earlier, my wife makes fun of that name incessantly and expects us to be like in an eye patch and talk with an accent. I believe it is actually from a Steve Jobs reference from a group that he created within Apple early on. And that's kind of where Gary got it from. But there's a small group of us. There's probably 15 or 20 people in that group, and we meet a little bit more frequently in Austin. And the cool part about those conversations is that we learn from the best. I mean, I feel so blessed and fortunate to be with this company. I know I'm preaching to the choir. You guys are all here today. You're participating in the education. But our company is different than any other real estate company on the planet. We unquestionably, people ask me all the time, your level of production, why wouldn't you go independent and start your own thing? Or why wouldn't you, go somewhere else like a brokerage that has a really low flat fee? And I explained to them that if you're not with Keller Williams, you don't understand the value that I get just out of being in a room with Gary is worth 3 times what my entire team pays in company dollar. Gary's a billionaire. You couldn't hire a billionaire to spend as much time as he spends with our group. And not to mention that, but look at the opportunities I've had. I'm a MAPS coach. I have a couple of master clients. I'm now an OP. I get referrals from agents all around the country as I'm able to speak and do things like this. That's an intangible value to me that you don't get anywhere else. So I feel so blessed. I am truly one of the agents that I tell people is unrecruitable. Like the amount of money that you would have to pay me to join another brokerage would not make any sense at all, because I'm that passionate about what we do. And so I am very fortunate to be in those groups. And I told John, what I've realized is that I have to be a good steward of that information. Gary's been so gracious to share what he knows, building the business and the life that he's built. And so what he's realized is that if he will spend time with some of the top agents, it's up to us to go out and share what we've learned. And so that's a big passion of mine. I love doing stuff like this, because if I can say one thing today that has an impact on your business or your life, or one thing that you can take away and you can look back on, and maybe it's a defining moment, or maybe it's even a little thing that you implement that gets you to the next step, then it's totally worth the time that I've invested. One thing for one person. So that's one of my big whys, is to come out and be able to teach. And I'm very passionate about growing leaders and being able to share the things that I've learned, both from Gary and through all the failure that I've experienced growing my business and along in life.
So I'd like to get back to my seat so I can take notes.
Cool.
Let's welcome Aaron.
I'm going to see if this clicker is on. It is. All right. So we've already done the About Me portion. It's not hard to see how this guy couldn't grow up to be super successful, right? That haircut and that winning smile, that Olin Mills photo.
If you would, please remember after class at 3 o'clock to turn your cell phone back on.
That's right.
Because I don't want you to miss any business after class.
That's right. Something close. I like that. John just assumed that you all have already turned it off. I like that. Yeah, so you guys already know about me, so we can kind of skip right on through this, but I wanted you to get a little bit of background again, not to try and impress anyone, but I want you to know when I talk about the stuff that I'm going to talk about today, I've lived it all. None of the things that I'm going to bring up are simply book knowledge. I have gone head to head with these concepts. I've fought through failure. I've had to blow up my entire sales team and rebuild it from scratch. I've made tons of terrible hires. My first assistant quit after lunch the first day. Seriously, like, that's not a joke. Like, literally, like, came in and was like, hey, I don't think this is the right fit for me, because I was an idiot at that point in my life and I didn't know what I was doing. And so learning from all of those things, I wanted to come up with some strategies that I felt like that I could share that would help you guys. So a blueprint for the next little bit of time. As I said, we're going to go through this, and I will share these slides with John. There's certain things that either you can't see very well, or that you want to look in more detail at, or you can't get a good picture. I'll be happy to send these to him so that if you guys want to look back to anything, you can. But I want to get through this material, and I want to cover it in depth, and I really want to leave time for us to have an open dialogue. Because in my experience, after going through something like this, you guys should have questions, and there's going to be things that you're currently experiencing in your business and your life that you want to get into more detail of, and that's where I want to be able to spend the bulk of our time. But a blueprint for what we're going to go over. The first thing is 2 simple strategies to master mindset. Why are we starting with mindset?
Most important thing.
It's the most important thing. Thank you for saying that. What you focus on expands, the bull law. That's exactly right. I want to share 2 of the things that I've learned from Tony Robbins and from other mentors that I have that have made a big difference for me as I've faced frustration and failure growing my business. And I think that the reason that we start with that is because if you have all the right strategies in the world, you've got all the resources at your disposal, and you don't have the right mindset, nothing else matters. It's that one thing. If you took away one thing from this today, and you just worked on these mindset tools, mastering these mindset tools, then that would propel you further than anything else that we're going to talk about. Number 2 is why and how winners fail forward. Was anybody at Mega Camp a few years ago when Gary did like an hour and a half or 2 hours on failure? Like, went through all the stories of the great people that we look up to, the failure that they've experienced and all those things. Was it family reunion? So I want to talk a little bit more about that. I'll share some experiences from my life, give you guys some of the main lessons that I've learned about failure. Because if you're in this business for more than about 5 minutes, you're going to experience failure. So why should you learn to embrace that, and what do you do next? And then we're going to get really tactical. Everybody knows that lead gen is the most important thing that you can be doing to grow a big business. And after you grow a big business, lead generating for talent is the most important thing that you can be doing to grow a big life. So I'm going to give you guys an idea. If I were starting off, how you would create a lead generation plan built for your business, and then I'm going to give you insight into our lead generation plan, our sources, and what that looks like for our sales team currently. And then I want to finish up talking about importance of consistency and accountability and leverage. So with the consistency and accountability, for the things that you're learning, why those are the two most fundamental things that will propel you forward with the strategies that you have, with the resources that you have. And then for me, I always say leverage is the truth that will set you free. If you want to have a big life, not just a big business, then it's all about leverage. So I'm going to share with some tips on leverage. That's where I'll share a snapshot of my organization. I'll talk about some of the pieces. I'll tell some funny stories. You guys will walk away. Some of you will think that I'm totally crazy, and some of you will think that I'm a genius. So I'll leave it up to you to figure out from there. But I love leverage. My philosophy on leverage is that no job is too small to pay somebody else to do it. And drives my wife crazy, but that's me.
On the subject of leverage, small hinges swing big doors.
That's true. Absolutely right. So we'll get into those leverage pieces, and I'll let you guys, and then from there, we're going to open it up, and we'll take the conversation wherever you guys want to take it. So let's start off with mindset. And as I said before, this is not my content, and I took a couple of the pieces that have made the biggest impact for me as I've consistently worked, because when you're talking mindset, there's so much stuff that's thrown our way. There's so many things that go on. It has to be a consistent focus. And my natural tendency is to overcomplicate things. That's just who I am at my core. I want to make things much more complicated and difficult than they really need to be. So what I've learned over time is if I can find simple strategies or things that I can remember, and I don't have to go through and read the 20-page manual on it, then I'm much more likely to implement those into my life. So the first one is what Tony Robbins calls the 3 components to a breakthrough. And there's a great podcast. For any of you guys, I love podcasts. When I'm in the car, when I'm on my bike, when I'm running, the different things that I do, my attention span, most of them are like less than an hour, so I can consume those, I can take that information. And this is one that I listened to recently that plays into the next slide that we're going to talk about. And it's the 3 components to a breakthrough. The 3 S's: strategy, story, and state. Say them with me. Strategy, story, and state. So let's break through these. The first one is strategy. So the first thing that we need, if we're at a point where we need to experience a breakthrough, we're frustrated with where we are, we've hit a ceiling, we're on that journey from E to P, and we've hit that roadblock, and we're ready for a breakthrough, the first thing that we need is a strategy. We need a game plan. We need to know somebody who's done it before us. What did they do? I love to talk about health. That's one of my big passions, so I look at that all the time. So if somebody's looking to lose weight, the first thing that they need is a strategy. They need a plan. And are there a plethora of opportunities and options and information out there to be able to find information on what it takes to lose weight? Yes. And are some of them better than others? Yes. Yes. So there's going to be certain things that are going to be easier to follow or more implementable. There's going to be other things that might be a little bit more difficult, that are more sustainable over the long term. So the first thing somebody needs to do is they need to go out and research the information to come up with a strategy that will get them from where they currently are to where they want to go. Is it the same thing for our businesses? Say yes. Yes. Yes, it's the same thing for our business. The first thing, if you want to go from 25 transactions to hiring an assistant and 45 transactions, you need a strategy. If you want to go from 100 transactions to 200 transactions, you need a strategy. If you want to go from a team leader of a market center with 20 agents to a team leader of a market center with 400 agents, you need a strategy. So that's where it all starts. That being said, are all strategies equal? No. Are some better than others?
Yes.
Will some get you there faster?
Yes.
Yes. So it's not just about finding the strategy, it's about finding the right strategy and talking to the right people to get there. So that's thing number 1. Number 2 is story. Do you know people in your life that have the strategy at their disposal and still did not reach the objective. Right? If not, then nobody would be overweight, right? And like if there's no shortage of information, then nobody would be unhealthy. We've got a model to build a millionaire real estate agent business, right? Yeah. We all have that model. It's the MREA. There's all the classes. This company, there's plenty of people that have done it before you. So you're not you're not going into uncharted territory. So then if we all have access to strategies, why doesn't everybody consistently achieve their goals?
They don't do it.
And that's where the next two things come into place. Story. What story are you telling yourself? Is it a resourceful story that will get you to where you want to go, or is it an excuse? One of the bowl walls is you can have reasons or results, but you can't have both. That's right. One of the biggest things that I hear when I'm coaching and consulting with agents, it's not that they lack the strategy. That is the first step. It's the story they're telling themselves on why they're not able to get there. For the group that was here this morning, Ben Kinney said something that I think is brilliant, and it's that we all tend to overcomplicate things to justify our inaction. We tend to overcomplicate things to justify our inaction. We allow ourselves to focus on the 80% and never get to the 20%. And that's a story, right? We tell ourselves the story. Well, I'm not as healthy as I want to be because these are my genetics, or I'm big boned, or my spouse doesn't support me, or I don't make enough money to buy high quality food. I don't have enough time to go buy those things and prepare. All of those are stories that people tell themselves to rationalize themselves out of taking action to do what they need to do to get what they want. Right? It's the stories that we tell ourselves. When Tony was telling this story in the podcast I was listening to, he was talking about speaking at a TED conference. And you're in a room filled with billionaires and entrepreneurs and world-class politicians and all these people who are super successful. And he asked the group, and I'm going to ask, who in here has had a situation where you set a goal and you didn't achieve it? Is every hand up? Okay. So why are some reasons that you didn't achieve it? What happened? What got in the way?
Broke my toe.
Broke your toe, all right?
Lack of focus.
Lack of focus, okay? What else?
Inconsistency.
Inconsistency, all right. Yes, ma'am.
Lack of belief.
Lack of belief, right?
Stomach bug.
Stomach bug, yeah. So one of the other things you hear, I didn't have the money. I didn't have the right money to do what I wanted to do to invest in it. I didn't have the education. I don't have the relationships. I didn't know the right people that could introduce me to the right people to get to where I wanted to go. All those are stories that we tell themselves about a lack of resources, right? We lacked a resource that prevented us, and therefore, because we lacked that resource, we told ourselves a story, and we rationalized the reason that we didn't get to where we wanted to go. What's really the issue, when Tony said this, I stopped my car and wrote it down because I think it's brilliant. It's not a lack of resources, it is a lack of resourcefulness that is most people's problem. It's not a lack of resources, it's a lack of resourcefulness. And I think that's so true. Because how many times have you seen the person that has all the cards stacked against them? They have no resources. They didn't come from the right pedigree. They don't have a great upbringing. They don't have the support of their family. They don't have any money to get started. And despite all of that, they still won and built a big business or a big life or got in the world-class shape or created the relationship that everybody envies and dreams of. Does that happen all the time? Yeah, because those people did not let the story that they could have told themselves get in the way of being resourceful enough to go tell themselves the right story to move them into action and to overcome the limiting beliefs or the objections that were in their way. So number 2 is the story. And number 3 is state. Your state is everything. The state that you show up at, the emotions that you bring to the table, how you respond. We talked a little bit earlier that you can't control outcomes, but you can control actions. And another book that I was reading talked about the fact that one of our biggest issues as a species, especially as people that were fortunate enough to be born in the United States of America, we're one of the wealthiest nations and have all the things that we have at our disposal, is we feel like we shouldn't have any problems, right? We think, I can't believe that happened to me, or I can't believe that I'm going through this. We tell ourselves a story which affects our state, and we put ourselves into there are resourceful states and unresourceful states. We allow ourselves to get into an unresourceful state, and we stick in that state. And if you can't get yourself out of that unresourceful state, you're never going to tell yourself the right story to pursue the strategy that you have. You guys follow me so far?
Yeah.
Yes. So the 3 components to a breakthrough are strategy, story, and state. I want to dig into state because this is an important one. The cool thing about state is if you have the right tools, you can make a change in your state how fast? Instantly. You can make a change in your state instantaneously with the right tools. And I'm going to give you guys the tool to do that. So when you find yourself, in that woe is me, or focusing on the wrong things, or frustrated that you experienced something, it's not that you experienced the failure, it's what did you do next? How long did you allow that failure or that frustration to derail you before you picked yourself up by your bootstraps, got resourceful, and started to do the activities? So the quicker that you can learn to manage your state and to change your state, the faster that you will get into action and that you will accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. So who wants the strategy to manage your state?
Yeah.
All right, so it's the triad. Has anybody seen this before? Tony Robbins' triad? So I'll share the slides with you, and feel free to take pictures of it. I also want you guys to write this down. That way anybody that's got paper, draw a triangle on your paper. I'm having you do this because if you tangibly take the actions to do this, you're more likely to remember it. If I came here a year from now, I would teach you this again. Why would I do that?
You have to hear it 7 times.
You have to hear it more than once. I taught the same thing in Phoenix. I think I've either taught it 2 or 3 times now. And this last time, people that had been in the room all 3 times, this is what they walked away with. And it's not that they didn't hear it the first time, it's that they heard it, and then maybe they didn't go back and look at their notes, and they heard it again, and then all of a sudden maybe they were in the right perspective that they realized what an impact it would make. So the first thing I want you to do is write down the triangle. On one leg of the triangle, write focus. On another leg, write language and meaning. And on another leg, write physiology. And then in the center of it, write state. These are the 3 things that control your state. And I'm going to walk you through them one at a time. Let's start with physiology, because physiology is the first thing that you can change the easiest when you find yourself in an unresourceful state. So if you are in a state that you know is not productive or that is not propelling you towards your goals, the first thing that you should do is take a look at your physiology and change something. So what do I mean by that? When we're unresourceful, do we tend to display a certain type of physiology?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hunched over, head down.
Yeah, exactly. So the example that I hear given is, okay, if I tell you that there's a depressed person behind door number 1, without seeing them, how many of you guys can describe that person's physiology? Yeah. Is his head up or down?
Down.
Are they breathing deep and powerful or shallow?
Shallow.
Are they speaking in a high tone or are they kind of monotone a little bit? Yeah. What are their eyes doing? Looking down, exactly. You all know the physiology of those unresourceful states. The cool thing about our bodies is when you change your physiology, you begin that first step of changing your state. Your mind doesn't know the difference. You can trick yourself in to putting yourself in a more resourceful state simply by changing your physiology. So when you're in there, get up, move around, change your tone, look up, take some deep cleansing breaths. Little things like that are the first step and can make an immediate change in your state. So that's one of the things that I do. When I find myself unresourceful, normally for me, the first thing I focus on is breath. Because breath is a big one. Breath and movement. If you know anything about the lymphatic system, the thing that kind of moves the sludge and the junk through your body, it's the only system in your body that doesn't have a pump. The lymphatic system's pump is movement. That's exactly right. So when you get up and you move around and you take some deep breaths, that instantaneously begins to change your state. The next thing is focus. What we focus on? Expand. You guys are all familiar with this, you KW folks. I don't have to tell you that. And we know that when things aren't going right, it's easy to focus on that. It's easy to focus on what's going wrong. It's easy to focus on the negatives, on what you're experiencing, and then it's easy to go into the blame game. Well, why did this have to happen to me? So if we know that what we focus on expands, we also always have the choice to decide what we are focusing on. You can't always control what happens to you. Things are going to happen in your life. You can't control what somebody else said, or how a client behaved, or what your spouse did, or something that happened to you. The fact that you had this horrible accident, or that you got sick, or that you experienced some sort of thing. You don't get to control that, but 100% of the time, you get to determine what you focus on and what you do next. So be real mindful about your focus. How long are you allowing yourself to focus on that negative before you get back to being resourceful and look at the positive? Because I'll tell you, the biggest failures for me, the biggest obstacles and challenges that I've faced, when I look back on them, I can find something positive. I can find something that I say, wow, had that not happened, I would never be to where I am now. Yeah. So as soon as you start looking for what you can be grateful for, even in the worst of situations, your state changes. So you change your physiology first. You look at what you've been focusing on. You change that focus. You become grateful for the obstacles that you've experienced. And then the last thing that you look at is language and meaning. We all have language and meaning that we tie to the events in our life. And again, just like focus, you get to decide on the language that you use and the meaning that you give to something. Can you not have two people that have the same exact experience, bad experience, and have completely different meanings that they attach to it?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so somebody gets like cancer, right? Some sort of horrible illness that could be terminal. To one person, they say, woe is me, my life is over, I'm never going to be able to do the things that I want to do, I can't believe this happened, it's going to, my life, I throw in the towel, I'm done. You can have a separate person with the exact same experience, exact same sickness that says, because this happened, it's going to be my defining moment. I'm going to beat this, I'm going to learn from this, and then because I do that, I'm going to love deeper, I'm going to learn, I'm going to take more advantage of the time that I have, and then I'm going to go talk about my story and tell everybody else what I experienced and teach them. And so same exact experience, two totally different meanings that they attach to that experience. So when I look at this, the cool thing is changing any one of these three things can change your state, and changing all three of them will create a massive difference in your state instantaneously. So the quote from Tony up at the top, what you consistently speak with emotional intensity, you will experience, you will create, and you will become. What you consistently speak with emotional intensity, you will experience, you will create, and you will become. I love that because that's the first step. We all said the reason that we're starting with mindset today is because that's one of the main keys that can propel you forward. Does this make sense to you guys?
Yes.
All right, so I want you all to take that. Here's what I want you to do with it. I want it to be a game for you how quickly you can get yourself out of an unresourceful state. So the next time that you see yourself in the state, something's happened, a deal's gone south, or somebody said something that made you mad, or somebody cut you off in traffic, or it can be a little thing, something didn't go the way that you wanted it to go, and you feel yourself, whether it's anger or frustration or resentment, there's a million different unresourceful states that are out there. When you feel yourself going there, think of this triad. Think of, okay, I'm going to change my physiology, I'm going to focus on something different, and I'm going to attach a different meaning to this. How quickly can you get yourself out of that unresourceful? So somebody cuts me off in traffic, and I'm mad, and you kind of start to tense up, and you breathe. So I'm just going to relax my shoulders. I'm going to take a couple deep breaths. I'm going to change where my focus is. I've changed my physiology. I'm going to stop focusing on what just happened to me, and I'm going to start focusing on, well, you know what? Yeah, I'm mad, but I'm going home to see my kids, or I'm going to the gym, or I'm going to go do this great thing, or I got something awesome coming up this weekend. And the language and meaning. That person, the story you're telling yourself, was that jerk, they cut me off, they are so insensitive. Maybe they were in an emergency. Maybe they had somewhere that they had to be. Maybe their kid's sick. Maybe they had something totally, but maybe they've got something else going on. They didn't even realize that they cut you off. So just change the language and meaning. If I do those three things, now is my state instantaneously changed.
Yes.
Yeah. So the thing that I always tell people is this has been a huge focus of mine for the last 3 or 4 years. And I credit to the fact that I no longer have bad days. I might have a bad minute. I might have a bad half hour. If it's something really crappy, I might have a bad hour. But I do not have bad days anymore because I have learned how to change my state. And I know that as long as I'm in that unresourceful state, I'm not going to propel myself to where I want to be. So this is something that I could teach in my sleep. I talk about this all the time. I teach it to my team members. Almost every time I teach a group of people, regardless of what it's about, I teach this, because I think if we all learned to better manage our states, the results that we could experience and the difference in the way that we would treat each other, we could revolutionize the planet. All right, so the triad. Those are the two things there. So one last thing on mindset before we move on. I wanted to break it down to a couple simple things that you can do. Number one is create a morning ritual. Your day starts with what you do in the morning. And there are certain things that you can do that will propel you forward into having a great day. And the lack of those things showing up consistently in your life will, at some point, will prevent you from getting where you want to be. And it can be different things. It doesn't have to be the same ritual. But I know for a lot of things, like if you look at Gary Keller's energy plan that he talks about, that's a great one. So eating something healthy, exercising, spending time with the people that you love, and spending some time in quiet prayer or meditation are a couple of the big things for me. I was working on my presentation this morning, so I did not go exercise, but I'm going to go swim in the Georgia Tech Olympic pool when I leave here today. But I did meditate. I spent 20 minutes going through my meditation before I woke up and finished my notes and started working on this. So my mornings look pretty consistent. Gary tells us all the time, you don't have to have a great day. You just need to master the morning. You need to get really clear on the things that you can do early in the day in the morning. If you can do that, you can let the rest of the day unfold and still have won the day. Win the morning, win the day. So create a morning ritual. Number two is get a hold of technology before it gets hold of you. Our business, technology, will wreck your life if you let it. Clients can get a hold of you all the time. Emails are constantly pinging on your phone. You've all read the one thing. If you haven't, then go read it. I'm not going to call you out if you have, but most of you guys have read it. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you haven't read it, go read it. Gary talks about how many times every hour we're distracted by technology, and then how much of the day we spend reorienting ourselves back to the task at hand. And because of that, how much longer it takes us to complete the things that we need to complete. So getting a hold of technology, what I mean by that, for me, my cell phone is always on silent. Even if I'm not in the meeting, I keep it on silent. It doesn't ring when somebody calls me. It doesn't beep when I get a text message, because I'm always focused on something, and I just carve out time to then go look at my text messages or return phone calls, but I don't allow them to distract me from what I'm doing or dictate my actions. If you were to look at my Facebook page, I think the last time I made a post was probably 2 years ago. Not our business Facebook page, because somebody else manages it. And I'm not saying get off Facebook. I'm just saying be cognizant of the amount of time and the time suck that it can become if you're not careful. I know so many people, like, they're at dinner with their spouse and both of them are just looking at Facebook, right? Or they're talking to their kids and they're just going. And I'm guilty of that sometimes. Like, I get caught up in work and I should be more present with my spouse and more present with my kids. I think bringing some awareness to it is a big deal. I have somebody else that filters all my email. I don't check email before 11. All of my email goes to an assistant, because I've realized over time that 90% of what I get is garbage, just like junk, or that I don't need to respond to. Somebody else in my organization needs to respond to it. So now it doesn't even come into my world unless I need to respond to it. So I went from getting 300 emails a day to getting 30 or 40, and a lot of those 30 or 40, somebody else has already taken the first step to take care of. So being cognizant of technology, or having quiet area. I know Tiffany came and spoke here. Did she talk about how she puts her phone in her drawer when she gets home at the end of the day? I love that. And she had to learn to do that. That was not a natural behavioral thing for Tiffany. She realized the effect that it was having. So that the next day is spend some time like Buffett. Who's read anything about Warren Buffett? How does he spend his time? What does he do for most of the day? He reads and thinks. You're exactly right. So I always encourage people, have some quiet reflection time. That's when you are going to have your breakthroughs. It's not when you're returning all your emails and making your phone calls and checking in on Facebook and running around and stressed out and looking at all your text message. When you're going to have your breakthroughs is when you're able to spend some time in quiet reflection, when you're able to listen to a podcast, when you're reading a book, when you're absorbing new material, and then all of a sudden you have this aha about how that corresponds with what you're doing in your own life. So spending some days like Buffett. And then the last one is choosing your peers and your friends wisely. You don't get to choose your family. You get to choose your spouse. Some of you, and that people have made the wrong decision there. I get that. But you don't get to choose your parents. Like, your kids are your kids. But you do get to choose your peers. You do get to choose the people that you spend your time with. And you are going to be the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most of your time with. So when we talk about mindset, if you're constantly hanging out with people that have low goals and that are negative and that aren't always looking at the bright side, I don't care how positive you are, that's going to rub off on you. And I would even say even if 4 of you are super positive and 1 of you is constantly the Debbie Downer and always has drama and is always like focused on all the things that are wrong, like that can even affect 4 or 5 people that are positive. So you've got to be really, really, really cognizant of who are the people that I'm putting myself around? Who am I learning from? Who's pushing me to grow? Who's coaching me? Who's doing the things that are giving me the insight that I need to make a big impact or change in my business? Be careful of those relationships. Choose those wisely. The great thing about a company like Keller Williams is now the people that I hang out with, even outside of work, are KW people a lot of times. I'm going to Alaska in July to do 7 days of fly fishing, like in this remote part of the world where they fly you into these private streams and rivers. And a lot of the people that if I just kept hanging out with my high school friends, or I only hung out with the people from college or not other business, they couldn't afford to do that. It's not something that these are expensive trips. So the cool part about me putting myself into circumstances or situations where I'm rising with the people around me is like I'm going on that trip with Brian Gubernick and Brett Tanner. You guys probably, some of you guys might know them. So 2 other big KWAs. And what will we talk about a lot of time that we're there? Business and growth and things that we're doing on. I spent a lot of time with Tim Heil. I got to spend 5 or 6 days with Ben Kinney earlier this year. I'm strategic about figuring out how I can add value to those people's lives to build that relationship so that I can learn and grow from them and with them. So being strategic about those relationships and who your peers are and who you're spending time with. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro 2 years ago. I did it with Adam Hergenrother and Nick Waldner, 2 big KW agents. I've got other business owners that are in my local market that my wife and I hang out with. So getting purposeful about those relationships is a really, really key thing that I would encourage you guys to do. All right, we're going to move on from mindset unless anybody has any burning questions or comments before we move to the next thing. Yes, sir.
Are you going to speak more about your morning ritual?
Yeah, I'll give you guys. So I'll go through that right now. Anything else on that? Is that helpful for the group? You guys want to know what mine is?
Yes.
Mine has changed over the years. And I would be lying to you if I told you that I always did it every single day and I never missed it. Life happens. Stuff comes up. And I also go through seasons where I get out of that routine. And normally I see the results that I'm creating start to change the longer I let that go. So like the last season where I got out of things was when we had our second child. For those of you that have kids, you know that they kind of change things a little bit, right? Like it's not the same. Your wake up time, the amount of sleep that you get, your commitments, those things change. So we had baby number 2, and I think I spent more time drinking than I did. I didn't fall off the wagon or anything like that. But like instead of like getting up early, it was my wife and I like, God, I think I need a second glass of wine after dinner to get me ready to do this all again the next day. So like I'm transparent about the fact like there are times where like I get out of those routines, but the trick for me is to not go too far, because when I do, I start to see that show up in other areas of my life. My attitude is affected, the results that work. So for me, when I do something like that, I have to have a hard reset. Like I have to go through. So I went through, like I had put on weight. I didn't feel very good. I didn't have a lot of energy. And I went to the Greenbrier last year to go fly fishing with the pirate group at Gary's fish camp, and we got to do all this super cool stuff. And I came back from that, and I just realized like I felt like crap. Like I wasn't doing the things consistently that I wanted to be doing. And so for me, that's when I started with something simple. I got a fitness tracker, and at that point it was hard for me to get to the gym every day. That was a story I was telling myself because my kid woke up super early. So I started like as soon as they would wake up, I'd throw her in the stroller, I'd grab the dogs, and we'd go walk 3 miles. And I was walking 3 miles like 5 or 6 days a week. So all of a sudden I started to lose a little bit of weight, I started to feel a little bit better, and then I hired a personal trainer. And on lunch, 3 days a week, I would go to the gym and I would lift weights and I'd do strength training sort of stuff. And then I got to a point where I'm like, all right, I want to ramp this up to the next level. And so that's when I started training for this triathlon that I just completed. It was a shorter triathlon. I have a goal to do a couple more this year. So for me, I hired a coach. I committed to a training plan, and I knew that I couldn't complete that event if I didn't have a plan in place and a coach and somebody telling me what to, that holding me accountable to those goals. So my morning routine, 5 days a week, I wake up and I work out. I do all of I swim twice a week, I run twice a week, and I cycle twice a week. And I had to create some systems, like I ride indoors a lot. I have an awesome indoor trainer that my bike is set up on. So I'll go out into the garage, I'll get up at 5 o'clock and I'll go into the garage and I'll ride for an hour and a half. Or I'll go to the park and go for a run. Or I'll go swim with the Masters group in Nashville. So that's the first thing that I do. The other thing is I meditate. I've gone through times where I'm more consistent, less consistent with that. But my goal is to meditate 20 minutes a day.
Before you work out or after you work out?
Before. Yeah, sorry, I should have said that. That's the first thing I did. By that time, our little one's normally up. My little boy is typically getting up around that time, and I spend about an hour in the morning with my family and my kids. So I don't rush into the office after that because they're still little. So I don't have more than an hour or so at the end of the day when I get off work to spend with them. So I take that time in the morning when they're in a great mood and they're excited to see me and we hang out together. And then I normally get to the office around between 8:30 and 9:15 most days. So I'm up at 5 or 5:15, but I'm not rushing into the office because that's just how my life works. So that's my morning ritual. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about learning to love failure and frustration. I talked earlier about the fact that one of our biggest issues is that we feel like that we shouldn't have frustration, we shouldn't have failure. So we spend too much time working to avoid failure or to avoid frustration instead of learning to embrace failure and embrace frustration. So what I would encourage you guys to do is when you have a frustration or you have a failure, get excited. Learn to embrace that because that means you're one step closer to having a breakthrough. And for me, when I look back on my life, like and building my business is not easy. Life is not easy. You're going to have constant failure. You're going to have constant frustration. So stop spending all your time trying to avoid it and get comfortable accepting it and figuring out what your strategies are to move past it. So for those of you that saw Gary talk all about failure, some of this will be a repeat, but I wanted to go through a couple of failure stories just to kind of set the mindset and then talk about some of the main lessons that I've learned to failure before we go into lead gen. So number one is Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Did not, and then went on to do what? When I think if you count the championship rings, 6 national championships, and has built a brand that grosses over $2.5 billion annually, all based off of his success as a So what if Michael Jordan would have got cut from his basketball team and gone and just done baseball? We saw how that went, right? He was a great baseball player. Or what if he would have said, you know what, I think I'm going to go do something, I'm going to go become a real estate agent or something like that. Great career path, but we would have missed out on one of the most inspiring athletes of my generation, possibly of all time, right? Bill Gates. Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard, did not complete Harvard, and started a failed business collecting traffic data. Can't imagine any worse business to be a part of than a business collecting traffic data. So what if he would have stopped there and just went to work for someone else or given up at that point? Well, he certainly would not be the richest man on the planet, worth over $75 billion. Constant failure, constant frustration, pushed through $75 billion. Oprah Winfrey. Who knows Oprah's story? It's pretty terrible. Like there's some of the stuff that you hear, but when you really get into it, so Oprah was born to a teenage mom. Like her mom got pregnant as a teenager. She was bounced around from family member to family member. At some point during that time, she was abused more than once by a person who was in their family. Was an African-American young female at a time when it was not easy to be an African-American young female, especially growing up in business. was told at her first television anchor job that she lacked talent and that she would never really amount to anything. I mean, talk about somebody that the cards are stacked up against.
And her nose, they told her nose was too wide.
Yeah, so I mean, you, like, when I heard, I didn't know all of the story, but when I heard about the abuse and the things that she went through and you know, all the things, and then who does she become? The top 5 richest self-made women with a net worth of over $3 billion. Somebody who has impacted crazy amounts of life, who has done more than just about anybody that I can think of, and is so positive minded and did that from such a tumultuous upstart and upbringing. So to me, it's like, what if Oprah would have quit? Or what if she would have told herself a different story about her success? Or what if she would have focused on all of the negative things that happened to her instead of focusing on the possibilities and what her potential could be? Or what if she would have listened to that first boss that told her that she didn't have any talent, it wouldn't really amount to much in their industry? Steve Jobs, forced out of his own company by his board of directors. You guys have seen the movie, right? You guys know the story. Like, built this company, they kicked him out, unceremoniously ushered out of his own organization, went and started another business, didn't accept that. I mean, would it not be pretty easy where you created this company from scratch, you get kicked out, he was still making money from that, he still owned some shares, to just have quit, to kind of like hung it up and ridden that out? At that point, I'm guessing he probably had enough money to live comfortably off of for the rest of his life, or close to it. Instead, he returned as a CEO over a decade later, helped make Apple the most valuable company on the planet with a market cap of over $700 billion from a guy that was forced out of his own company. So I tell you guys these stories because I want you to realize that when you fail, you are in good company. We all experience the failure. It's not about the failure, it's about what you do next. What's the next action that you take? So here's a couple things that Gary's taught us about failure. When I was with him last time in Austin a month ago, he opened up the mastermind, and you could tell, like, there's just a lot going on. There's a lot going on in our industry. There's been change within Keller Williams. There's all this technology stuff that he's working on. And he opened it up and he said, guys, life is hard, and it requires work and diligence to get the most out of it. Life is hard, and it requires work and diligence. And this is a guy who it's easy for me to look at and say, he's got it figured out. He's got it all put together. And he tells the story when he was starting Keller Williams. Keller Williams, people turned around, and they were this behemoth of a company. Like, we became the world's largest company fairly quickly by a lot of people's standards. And they said, man, this Keller Williams thing came out of nowhere. And what Gary said is they missed the decade where we were just failing. Like, we weren't having success expanding out of Austin. I had the wrong people on board. I had hired a bunch of the wrong franchisees, the wrong regional owners, and we were failing as an organization. But what Gary did is he realized that if he continued to push through it, it would make some great hires, then he could pass all that. So then it looked like an overnight success to a lot of people, but it was really the decade that he spent battling through the challenges and the frustrations to get to the point where he calls it the lost decades. If we were losing money for Keller International, but he has had other businesses, the Southwest Market Center, those businesses were making money, but International was losing money for a number of years, but he didn't quit. And so when he says life is hard, it requires work and diligence to it, this is a guy who has lived through it, and I think it's important for us to recognize that and remember that. Number 2 is you don't succeed your way to success, you fail your way to success. Why is that? Why do you fail your way to success?
You don't learn by getting it right.
That's exactly right. Gary says when you succeed, you celebrate, and when you fail, you ponder. When you succeed, you celebrate, and when you fail, you ponder. So what happens when we fail is we take a look at, well, what do we need to do differently? Or where did we go wrong? Or how can we change the way that we're operating? Who do we need to hire? Or what adjustments to our strategy do we need to make in order to get there? Versus succeeding, we just kind of high five, and that keeps us on that same plane. So we fail our way to success. And the last one, I mentioned this earlier, experiencing failure doesn't make you a failure unless you quit. for those of you that saw Gary do Quantum Leap, he talked about the fact that for a long time he went through life thinking that he was a physical being having a minor spiritual experience.
Yeah.
I was a physical being having a minor spiritual experience. And then what I realized is that I was actually a spiritual being having a minor physical experience.
That's right.
So when I made that realization, I recognized that I could completely get rid of fear. Because it wasn't about this physical experience that I was having. It was much bigger than that. I had a bigger purpose for what I was trying to accomplish, and I knew that it was going to take a long time, and I knew that it was a journey, not a destination, and that it was more about what I would learn along the way and the decisions that I would make, not about what the goal was. When we were together recently, he said, stop paying attention to the timelines on the goals. The days, the weeks, the months, all those are is markers of time. Instead, get really clear about what you want to stand for, who you want to become, what you want to be remembered for, and devote all of your energy and all of your attention to accomplishing that, and forget about the time frame. So recognizing that if that is your journey, if you believe what he says there, if you believe that you are a spiritual being having a minor physical experience, and that it's going to take time, and it is about the journey, not the destination. Tony Robbins says success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure.
Mm-hmm.
Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. So if you recognize that, then understand that you're going to experience failures along the way. And the sooner you can accept that and even learn to embrace that and know that that's putting you one step closer to a breakthrough, the bigger your business will get and the bigger your life will get. So let's get tactical for a few minutes. Let's talk about lead gen. If you all, if you, I'm sure it's on the wall in here somewhere. The triangle, yep, there it is. Leads, listings, and leverage, right? Somebody asked me earlier, kind of like, what was your one thing when you were building your business? What was your one thing now? And I said the cool thing is, we getting back to simplifying things. There's really only two things it ever is. First, it's lead generating for business, lead generating for listings, and then you get to a certain point, and it becomes lead generating for talent. That's all it is. Like even Gary today, as he's grown the largest real estate company on the planet, his thing is he's still out there lead generating for talent. He's putting the right people in place in order to get the things that to fulfill the goals that he set for the different organizations and businesses that he's a part of, right? So the reason I want to talk lead generation is because I don't know where you all are in your business, but I'm assuming there's some people in here that are newer in their business. I'm assuming there's people that are maybe have a small team. I assume there's people that already have a small team that are building a bigger team, and this is great either way. So when I teach new agents, one of the first things that they always say is, like, what did you do to be successful? What do I need to focus on? And they expect like this big book of information, and I always break it down to all you need to do is figure out your top lead generation sources, 1 to 2 of them, and commit to a level of mastery on those, and you don't need to do anything else until then. You don't need to go build your website. You don't need to learn to master a contract. I don't care, because if you can give the best buyer presentation on the planet, but you don't know how to lead generate, does it matter?
No.
Say no. No, because you don't have anybody to give it to, right? So when I'm coaching agents, there's a reason that we spend, and some of you are sitting here saying like, oh God, here we go again. We're going to talk about lead generation. Like I can see the look. Like, oh, he's going to tell us lead gen. We know lead gen's important. We know lead gen's important. When I went to a mastermind that Tony DeSello did, and he said, when you come to things like this, you are not here to hear the new. You are here to hear the old and ask yourself, why am I still not doing it?
Yeah.
Right? Because you all know, like you all have access to the MREA. You all know it exists, right? Is there anybody that didn't know there's a book called MREA in this room?
Yeah.
Right? So you all know it's there, but you're not all doing it. Not everybody has a millionaire real estate agent business, right? So you're coming to these things to say, here's where I am currently in my business. Here's where I want to go. What information do I probably need to be retold? It's not likely going to be new information. It's probably something that need to be retold, that you're now finally at a point where a light bulb goes off and you're like, all right, now I'm ready to hear that because of where I am. John, were you going to say
So
something?
I saw 9 cell phones come out, and they're all taking pictures of the slide. Somebody even leaned over and said, hey, if you're going to send this out, this is page 138 of the MRE.
Yes, it is.
Just so you know.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
And so why do I show this? Because the cool thing about lead generation is it's very, very simple. There's prospecting-based lead generation, and there's marketing-based. Which one do you start off with when you're a new agent? Why?
No money.
It's cheap and it's free. There's no cost to it. At some point, you probably invest in some marketing-based, but the great thing is, you look at all these things, you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta do all that? Nope. You have to do one or two of them at a very, very high level. You can build as big of a business as you want, mastering one or two of these things. I can show you a top agent around the country that has a millionaire real estate agent doing FSBOs, or doing expireds, or advertising, or doing open houses, or focusing on their past client service. Any one of these will work at a super high level. It's just most people don't commit to one, and they don't pursue mastery at that. It's that simple. Like, I know this sounds crazy, but the biggest mistake that I see people make is they get in and they pick one thing and they didn't really put much thought about it, but they heard somebody else did that, so they decided to do that, and they do it for a little while and they don't get the results that they wanted, so they quit and they say, well, that didn't work, I'm going to go find something else. Did it not work? Or did they just not do it long enough? And did they not go and ask more questions? Did they not invest the time to become a master at it? So what I always say is, like, yes, I can show you businesses around the country where people are doing massive amounts of business off of one or two things, off of any one of these things. And the other cool thing that you'll realize is that top agents, I've studied this, top agents get the majority of their business, most of the time it's 75% plus from 1 to 2 sources of business.
Oh, yeah.
They might do 15 different things. Like if you sourced every one of our closings, and I'm going to show you that slide next, you might see a lot of different sources, but you'll be surprised when you see the percentage that comes from 1 or 2 sources. So the cool thing about this is it's not going to be the same for everything. Different markets are going to dictate different lead generation strategies. Different personality profiles are going to dictate different lead gen strategies. Different places where you are, your current level of income, the money that you have to invest in it are going to dictate different lead generation strategies. So all you need to do is you can take the picture that you took, or you can go to page 138 of MREA, and you can sit down and you can look at it and you can say, based on my personality, based on the money that I have to invest, based on the things that I'm naturally good at, based on what I have the most resources to go out there and duplicate, what's the one thing to start with that I'm going to spend the next 2 or 3 years becoming a master on, and then don't quit until you've exhausted it and gotten as much possible business as you can out of that. If agents would do that, the results that they would have would be shocking. It's not that, are people not successful because they never learn to overcome a listing objection?
No.
Are they not successful because they never get really great at filling out a purchase and sale agreement?
No.
Are they not successful because they just can't figure out the steps to get the deals from executed contract to closing?
No.
No, those things are easy. The reason that we have such a high turnover rate of people getting out of our industry is because they never learn to lead generate. They quit too soon, they never pursue mastery, they're unwilling to go back to the well and find the resources to help them understand the things that they need to do. That is the only reason that people don't build the business that they want to build. The only reason. Or, I said the only reason, I'm gonna back that up, because we're talking about lead generation. Or they never learn to lead generate for talent. They master this and they never become a leader. And that's one thing that we're going to talk about as well. They never invest themselves, because it is a different skill set. What makes you a phenomenal listing agent or buyer's agent are not the same set of skills that you need to develop to lead a large organization, to go from being a self-employed person to a business owner. But it's always one of those things, 2 things. I can look at somebody's business that's not getting the results that they want, and it's always because they either hit a ceiling because they never learned to replicate their lead generation and didn't build a scalable lead generation model, or they got really good at becoming an agent and they never were willing to take the time and the classes and invest the effort in learning to grow and develop people. So they built a great job for themselves, but they never built a great business because they never learned how to lead people. You guys follow me?
Yeah.
It's one of those 2 things always. So we talk about simplifying things, like it's nothing else. It's nothing else. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to make, when you said something about the details, I think the devil is in the details, and people say that comically, but I think the devil keeps people in the little details because it's the concept that counts and the strategy, and the details can be taken care of.
Yeah, that's right. All of the little details that being a real estate agent, like I tell, when we have a new agent join our team, they're always assigned a mentor, and they shadow that mentor. And part of that is, going on listing presentations or going on buyer appointments or having them walk through a purchase and sale agreement. And none of that really matters until they're comfortable getting on the phone and generating business or building business from their sphere, hosting an open house. So for us, the majority of our initial onboarding is focused on that. Because I tell them, like, if you find the worst problem that you have, if the worst problem that you have is you go out and you generate a hot client and you don't know how to service it, then we'll help you with that. Like somebody can just help you do the deal for you. Like that's not the issue. The issue that's going to prevent you or is going to wash you out of the business or not allow you to make your monthly expenses is not going to be because you couldn't figure out how to go show a house. It's going to be because you never learned to lead generate.
Well, yeah, and if you're in an organization like this, what I can see is that you have the person that's like the head person. They're gonna lose the most if they don't help you. Because
That's right.
how
Yeah,
they make
you
their
don't have to
money.
worry about that. Exactly. There are people there to help you with that. So if I'm coaching you, or I was consulting you, or we're looking at your business, and you didn't already have more leads than you could handle, because that's when you start to leverage, right? When you know it's time to start focusing on leverage is when you have more leads than you can possibly handle yourself. And then all of a sudden you hire some administrative talent, that gives you a little bit more leverage. You can go out and lead generate some more, and then you hit another ceiling to where you personally can't do anymore, and you hire a showing specialist or a buyer's agent, and you go do more, and then you hire more buyer's agents, and then you get a listing specialist, and then, but that path is, you always determine it when you're ready for that next hire of, you're staying focused on the 20%, and you can no longer invest any more time, or there's no more time to invest to get to that next level. That's when you know that you're ready for leverage. But in between each of those is you're working on scaling up your lead. Even where I am right now, we have 9 agents in production. And we were up to 11, and we lost a couple people. We're back to 9. We're adding a couple more over the next 45 days. And so I'm going to get to a point to where we've got the people that we have, we only have enough leads for those people. So then what I have to do, if I want to keep growing, I've got to go back and figure out, all right, how can I tweak the lead sources that we have to get more leads from those? So I'm going to spend more money on marketing, or I'm going to invest more in our sphere, the things we can do, or how can I add another lead gen source? But it's always that balance of generating more leads so that you can add more leverage. Again, this is not the how to make $50,000 a year class. This is the how do you make $1 million a year class. So if that's the path that you're going down, that's the question that you're asking yourself. Do I need more leads, or do I need more people? Yes, ma'am.
People.
Which one of these lead generations does your company do?
That's a great source and question, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to this slide. As I said before, top teams get the majority of their business from 3 to 4 sources. That's what Gary says. I think it's actually 2 to 3, not 3 to 4. Like, at least for the teams that I've surveyed, this is one of my favorite exercises. If you and I were in a networking group together and I had you one-on-one and I was learning about your business, the first thing I would want to get clear on is the size of your organization. Like, who do you have? Once I figured out the volume that you did and the number of transactions and how many people you had, the next thing I'm going to ask you is your lead gen, is your sources. Like, source your closed business for me, because that helps me understand how you got to where you were and how scalable your business is and what your next steps are. So for us, this pie chart, this is my actual numbers. For us, 53% of our business is past client sphere of influence. At one point, that was as high as 86%. The problem with that for me, and that's great business to have, right? Would you all rather have a referral, or would you rather have an internet lead? Referral, right? So I was clear about that I wanted that. It's not that that was bad. The problem was that for us, it wasn't scalable. If I wanted to go to 10 or 12 agents over a short period of time, I couldn't grow my sphere fast enough to generate leads for that number of people. So I had to go seek out some other lead generation sources that were scalable. By scalable, I can pull a lever, right? I can invest more money and create more online leads. I can do that all the time, right? Or I can pay more marketing dollars and I can get more postcards or billboards or whatever your thing is at that point. But it started off and it was spheres. And I'm going to give you all a secret, a tip, so make sure you're paying attention right now. If you're working to figure out what your 2 sources are, one of them is past clients in Sphere. Okay? One of them. Every agent that I talk to around the country, one of them is past clients. So I've just done half the work for you. Now all you have to do is go figure out what your second source is going to be. And you don't even really need to figure that out until you've matched with the past client Sphere. Right? So the first thing you're going to do is that. For us, 24% is online at this point. And that's a couple of different things online. It might be, we have a Boomtown website. We pay for some Zillow leads. We do home valuation leads that we market through Facebook. We've got 4 or 5 sources of those leads. We generate about 700 to 800 leads a month right now between our different sources. A big bulk of those are online. So when you add up our past clients and online, what percentage of my business is it? And spoiler alert, it's at the bottom if you're not good with addition. 77%. So for us, last year, out of the 253 transactions that we did, 77% came from 2 sources. Which for me makes me go, well, why the hell am I doing all those other things? Excuse my language. I typically pay $100 to KW Cares before I speak so that I can say a couple things like that. But why am I doing all those other things? And honestly, a lot of those other things, like we could do away with those and we wouldn't see a big impact in our business. We do them to add people to our past client sphere of influence. Yeah. Every open house we lead, if we treat them right, becomes a member of our database. Or every sign call that we convert. We're doing it to grow the size of our database, but we're also very clear about the fact that those are the 2 things that matter most. If we let one of those things slide, we're in trouble. I think that you had a question there.
Yeah, since you were new to Nashville, how did you get how did you add Mets to your database?
Yeah, so for me, not only was I new to Nashville, but I was 22 years old. I had really and so I just went out and I joined boards. I was marketing to teachers at my college, like trying to get them to connect me to people. I volunteered at events. I went to different social things. I was leveraging the networks of other people that I met, and it was an organic process. So it took a while. Like that first, I get it. I've been there before. It's not like all this for me did not happen overnight, for sure. I see some agents and it looks like they're an overnight success. My story is not that. It was grit. It was determination. I told the group that was here this morning, like I am never the smartest person in the room. It's not that I have some super high IQ that brings me all these strategy, but I am super gritty. I will outwork anybody. Like if
Not
you.
me.
Well, maybe not you. But that's my secret to success. And Gary says that too. Like Gary's like the reason. So I was hearing him tell his stories. Like you look at Gary's role. He's created some incredibly powerful, strong leaders that are extremely wealthy. Look at the Mark Willis's and the Mo Andersons and the Mary Tennants and those people. He said, "Do you want to know the difference? Like, why am I Gary Keller and they're who they are?" He said, "It's only one thing. It's grit. It's determination. It's like I am relentless at narrowing down what the most important thing I can focus on at that time is, and only focusing on that. I have not yet got to the point where I have developed the Gary Keller level of grit and focus. The more time I spend around him, the more that I see that he's absolutely right. That is one of the things that differentiates him. Is it's unbelievable, like how he can let things get super messy around him and let issues happen and just not worry about those and stay focused on the one thing that he knows is going to make the biggest difference. So for us, like we live this. I heard all those things in MREA. As my business grew, I kept looking at the statistics and the numbers, and I found that it's absolutely correct. From there it goes from 24% all the way down to 8%. So those 2 sources. So if I was coaching you and you were wanting to grow a bigger business and you were in that, new agent up to probably $20 million in volume, it's focusing on lead generation and adding a couple key people to your organization. Questions on lead gen model? Yes, sir.
If you're getting an average of 750 leads a month and you have 253 transactions, that's 2.8% conversion rate. Is that average, low, or high?
So let me tell you this, when you look at leads and you look at conversion rates, it depends 100% on the source of the leads. So at the beginning of the year, we were probably creating 400 leads a month. So it hasn't been 700, like last year it wasn't that number. So the conversion rate, if I told you, I'd have to look at how many leads we generated last year, it was probably half that. So last year, it probably looked more like a 5 or 6% conversion rate. Does that mean that all of our lead sources convert equally? No.
No, past
right?
clients will.
Right. Past clients
Kill 'em.
probably is at 90%, right? And that's why so much of our business came from there. However, if it was 5 or 6%, then internet might have only been 1.5% or 2%. We'd had to generate a lot more leads. The other thing that you'll realize about online or internet is it's a long-term process. It takes 2 years to really figure out what your conversion rates are. Because if you generate the average incubation time for an internet lead is 18 months. So when you're dealing with the internet, if it was a 2 or 3% conversion rate, that doesn't mean like if I generate 100 leads today, I'm not gonna close 2 or 3 from that 100 this month. I'm gonna close 2 or 3, maybe best case scenario, from that 100 over a 2-year period. I might close one of them in 45 days. I might close another one 8 or 9 months. We've got people all the time now that we're closing that entered into our database 3 or 4 years ago. Like we had a deal from somebody that we had followed up with, wasn't responding at all. We had even archived that lead in our system, and they bought a $700,000 house last month. Right? So the challenge with internet, the reason that I tell you don't go there first is because it's a numbers game, and it takes a lot of work and effort over time. So for us, I have 10 agents. I have 3 inside salespeople. So I can afford for them to be churning through those leads, and they have enough time spread out among all of them to fall. If I only had one other person and I was generating that number of leads, I'd be wasting money and they'd be super overwhelmed and they wouldn't know what to do first. You have to have a system and a plan in place. And I did that. I didn't do that last year. We've ratcheted up as we've set a plan to add our agent count because I needed more agents in order to close more deals, right? So as I added agents, I had to add leads, but I also know that the reason the conversion rate sounds low right now is because a lot of these leads as we went from like 200 or 300 leads a month to 600 or 700 leads a month, a lot of those aren't going to start converting for 12 months or 18 months. It's a long game when you get it. And it's also scalable. That's the reason that I like it, because my vision was to build a big business where some of the other lead sources aren't as scalable. Online is. Like I said, I can pull a lever, I can put more money towards it, and that money's gonna generate more leads. Maybe not at the same cost per lead, but I can always generate more.
Well, and it all comes back to what you talked about before that was important, talent. Because it's the
That's right, you
talent
gotta have
of
the
the
right
people that know what to do with those leads.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yep, you gotta have the right people on the bus and in the right seats in order to get there.
Right.
So, any questions on our lead sources or creating do you feel like you have the tools that you need to go back? If you don't know what your top 2 sources are, do you now know what you need to go do?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You know what your 2 lead sources are. I mean, you're closing 250 PV transactions with this. At some point, would you say, I want to beef up my geographic farm? Like, is there a certain point that you decide you're going to add, or you just throw more into
Sure,
the 2 best?
there could be, depending upon a couple of things. Like one, I might say, well, the downside about online is you don't always get to choose where the business is, right? So if I said I want to do more in this specific area, and that's really, really important to me, then I might have to go to something like geographic farming, or doing mailers, or door knocking, or prospecting from a phone list from just that specific geographic area. So it's going to be dependent upon, but the first thing I would tell you to do, so I'm not going to say you never add another lead source. We're constantly toying with other things. Like we're constantly trying more mailers or doing more to try and generate agent referrals. The challenge is that most people do that too soon. So I would tell you that's not most people's problem. Most people's problem is they could be doing more with their top 1 or 2 sources, but they jump too quickly.
I agree.
Follow me? Say yes?
Yes.
Importance of consistency and accountability, and then we're going to talk about leverage, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So for me, consistency is what puts you on the path to mastery. You all know about the 10,000 hour rule, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got to invest 10,000 hours in something in order for you to be on that path to mastery. So what I would tell you is that most people quit too soon. Most people never pursue that path. They get distracted. It's the squirrel effect, right? Like, oh, look over there. No, I know none of you guys are guilty of that as agents. Right? You're all super focused. You never get distracted. And the cool thing about it is if you've read the one thing, it's not a mastery of everything. Like you don't have to be super detailed and focused all the time. You only have to time block the things that matter most. So don't become a master of everything. We all know what happens then, right? Master, jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah. So that's a very, very true statement. Chad Hyams came and did the 6 personal perspectives at one of my market centers, and he said the problem is like if you go through and you have all these traits and you rank what are you an 8, 9, or 10 at, and what are you a 0, 1, or 2 at, you're probably only going to move the needle a couple of points on any of those traits. So if you're a 0 at something, there's a low chance that you're going to ever get to be a 10 at it. But if you're an 8 or 9 at something and you dedicate the time and the effort, you can get to a 10 at that. So what you should do? You should focus on those things that matter the most that you have the chance of getting a 10 to, and you should leverage out the ones that you're naturally not good at, that you're likely never going to get to that path of mastery on. Right? At this point in my life, I'm probably never going to play like the violin at Carnegie Hall, right? That ship has probably sailed for me. Never picked up a violin. I don't have the time to invest in it, but I know what I am good at, right? So I'll just pay somebody to come play violin if I want to hear violin. I'm not going to play it. And so I'm just clear, like for me, I'm very, very, and when we talk about leverage, this will come up a little bit, but I'm really clear on the things that I don't want to do. And it drives my wife nuts. Like she thinks like, oh, we have this nice house and we have this farm property that we buy, like, pride of ownership. Like we should like go out there and work in the yard and we should fix stuff when it comes to it. I mean, absolutely not. Sorry baby, but you married the wrong man for that. Like I am super unresourceful, like, and I by choice in those areas. Like when I said no job is too small, like when you look at the leverage that we have, not just on my team, but around our house, like I would much rather go and speak or coach or train one of my people or help them do another deal, which will pay for somebody to mow my yard for the next year. Like I'm real clear about that. Like when there's something that goes wrong, like we have a leak in our house, I'm like, yeah, it's a leak for sure. Like I can tell it's a leak. I know that much.
Coming from there.
And here are the 3 plumbers that I would encourage, like my assistant, to go call to manage to get that done. And so like my wife is finally starting to learn, like there are little things like you can put on my plate, but like just call Hannah. She'll make sure it gets done. Like I'm gonna forget or I'm gonna screw it up. Because then what happens is like I know I'm not naturally good at that, and every once in a while she tricks me into like you know what, baby, you're right. Like I'm gonna go get my tool belt out of the tool shed and I'm gonna come put that thing on and I'm gonna fix this. And an hour later I am so angry and I've done more damage than good, and now it's twice as expensive for me to go back and fix it. That it's like, and she knows like I'm gonna have to really get the triad out to change my state after that. I'm pissed. I'm like, all right, I am angry now. Like I gotta change my physiology. I gotta focus on something different. Because I don't like to admit that I'm not good at things, but I am not good at that sort of stuff. So like when I say consistency puts you on a path to mastery, consistency of the right things, the things that matter most. Follow me?
Yes.
So the next thing is accountability. Accountability is complete ownership of your outcomes. We talked about before, you can't always control what happens to you, but you can always control what you do next. You don't always have control of the results, but you do have control of the actions. So when I look at accountability, we talked about goal setting earlier today, and I'm going to give a brief recap of what I said there. When I set goals for my team, I don't set a goal and then say, all right, you're going to do 30 deals, and you're going to do 20, and I think you could probably do 45 this year. That means based on what we have left, like you need to do 60 deals. Because nobody cares about your goals. Get really clear on that. If your goal is to build a mega team, your admins, your assistant, the buyer's agent, they don't care about your goals. So that sounds like I'm not going negative on you guys here. So just like listen. Like what happens is that they don't care. So what you need to do is you need to get clear on their goals and help them figure out how to achieve their goals, such that by doing it, your goals will be met along the way. So I gave the example, like we're setting our team goal this year. We passed out an economic model. I've had everybody decide how much money they want to make. They run that through this model, tells them how many deals they need to do based on conversion rates. Now they know how many nurtures they need to generate, how many appointments they need to go on a monthly basis. So now, when we sit down and have an accountability meeting, I am holding them accountable to the activities that they told me that they need to do in order to reach their goal. So then what happens if we take all of their combined goals and we add those up and it's not where I want to be? What does that mean? What do I need?
More people.
I need more people. That's exactly right. I don't go back to those people and say, hey, I know you wanted to make 150 grand this year. In order for you to make 150 grand, you need to do 40 deals, but for me to hit my goal, I really need you to do 50. So can we because that's her financial thermostat. That's where they decided that they wanted to be. Unless they have a change in their big why or something comes up, me just telling them that doesn't change anything. So what I've got to get clear on is I need to know how many more people I need at an average level of production to get me where I am. All I need to do is hold them. I will tell you, the hack to that is get people who find big goals, right? Go out and find people that have big goals. That means you need less people, but you're not going to build a team of 20 or 30 agents that all want to make $500,000 a year. Like you're going to have, when you get to a large organization, unfortunately the law of averages start to play in a little bit, and so you've got to figure out at an average level of production, how can I coach people to get what they want, such by them all getting what they want, I get what I want along the way. That was a huge aha for me. It changed the way I looked at accountability, because now instead of accountability feeling painful or feeling like, I'm having to crack the whip, all I'm doing is holding them accountable to what they told me that they wanted to achieve. So the neat thing about that is now that it's a different meaning, the conversation. Well, did your goal change? Well, no. Did the outcome? So we go through those things. So we'll say if somebody's not on track to reach their goal, well, you told me that you were going to do A, B, and C last week. Did you do that? Well, I did A and B, but I didn't do C. Okay, is C still really important for you to get there? Do you still need to do C, or have you found another alternative that you want to plug in instead? No, I still need to do that. Okay, well, what prevented you from doing it last week? Well, I got bogged down dealing with the 80% of activities, or something happened. Okay, are you still committed? Are you committed to doing that this week? Or what do you need to do differently to get it done this week? So, and then if consistently they're not doing the things that they told me they needed to do, then it goes back to the goal. Well, did your goal change? Like, if so, I'm totally cool with that. Just tell me your goal changed, and I'll stop pushing you to do these activities to get you to this goal. You can do different activities. Because I can't control the outcome, but I can hold them accountable to doing the activities. And everybody needs it. That was my other big aha. I thought for a long time that if I just went out and hired really self-managed and super talented people, that they wouldn't need accountability. That's not true. Everybody goes through a slump. Everybody has unexpected things that come up, and that's where having a coach or being held accountable keeps you on track to staying on that path. I already told you guys, I have times where I fall off the wagon of things with like my lead gen or lead generating for talent or health or eating right, all of those things. So if I need to be held accountable, what makes me think that any of my people are any different? So you've got to be willing to have accountability in your own life, which means go get a coach. That's my point number 3 out there. And you've got to be willing to have the hard conversations to hold your people accountable as well. Yes, ma'am.
Well, and the biggest thing that I see with working with clients is that they have a dream, and most people never want to ask them what their dream is. But if you can get them to give you their dream and then back it in so you can reverse engineer it in your own mind and then test it a few ways, then you get your dream because it's a dream.
Well, the cool thing about that is you're talking about with clients, it's no different from the people on your team. Right? It's no different from the people that you hire. All you have to do is figure out what their big why is, what they want to get, and then put a plan in place for that and hold them accountable to that. Now you're just helping move them towards their dream.
And it's fun to think about.
That's right.
Because they drift off into it.
Yep, that's right. So you keep them focused on that big why. Any other questions on importance of consistency and accountability before we go on to a little bit of leadership and then open it up for questions? Yes, sir.
One quick question in terms of accountability. Early on in your organization, I'm assuming you were the model for what your team could model, right, in terms of lead generation or whatever. Now that your business has grown, is that person still you? Is there somebody in your organization now that your team can model for daily lead gen habits?
It's not a person, it's a standard. So we set a standard in our organization, and we hold people accountable to the standard. The standard's based off of what that person's goals are. So not everybody looks the same. So yeah, I'm still in there working every day, but I'm not in production anymore. I got out of production, March was 2 years. So I'm not going on listing presentations or working. My one thing is lead generating for talent, for looking for people either for the market centers or for my sales team, and coaching and consulting those people. Because if I do that, they're going to be the ones to grow the businesses that we're involved in.
Okay,
So for me, it's setting a standard and then letting the standard is the accountability. You're holding people accountable to standards. And whether you have written standards or not, there's a standard in place. And maybe the standard is that there's no standards, right? And that's a problem too. For a long time, that's how we operated. Like, we didn't have the structure that we have in our 401s. We didn't hold people accountable to outbound lead generation. We didn't hold, like right now, like you have to meet certain standards. You have to, and then once you have leads in your pipeline, you have to meet lead pipeline standards as well. That pipeline has to be managed in a particular way if you want to hold on and have the right to continue to work those leads. So we have those standards in place, and then we just hold people accountable to the standards. Yes, ma'am.
What do you mean by lead pipeline standards? Like, could you give us an example?
Yeah, so let me give you an example of that. So for us, there's a couple of things. We manage all of our leads inside of our CRM, which for us is Boomtown. That's our online lead management platform. There's a lot of great ones out there, and that's just what we've been using for a long time. So in order for you to move a lead into your own pipeline and your account, you have to have qualified it as a nurture. So what's a nurture? A nurture means we have multiple forms of contact, like at least phone and email, that we've had a conversation with the person, that they have a defined timeline to buy or sell. It doesn't have to be immediate. It could be 6 months from now. It could be 2 years from now. But they have some defined timeline and some motivation. That's like new job change, or kids are moving out of school, or I got an aging parent that's going to move. They've got to have some sort of motivation, and they've got to be willing for us to follow up with them, and they're not currently working with an agent. So you only can take a lead out of our central lead database when it comes in and move it into your pipeline if you've done those things. Otherwise, it's still available for anybody to call, follow up with, check in with. At the point that you qualified them as a nurture, you move it into your pipeline. But in order to keep leads in your pipeline, we have standards. So the standard is every lead in your pipeline has to have a to-do set for them. You can't have anybody in there that does not have a to-do set. Because it's one thing when you got 4 or 5 people that you're talking to, but when you got 75 or 80 people, you don't even remember who they are. You don't remember the last conversation that you had. You don't remember when you need to call them again. So you've got to have a system for it and a standard. And the system for us is every single lead in your pipeline has to have a to-do set. The number 2 is you can't have past due to-dos. Right? If you've got a bunch of past due to-dos, then that means that even though you set the to-dos, you're not getting the people. You don't need any more leads if you can't even keep the to-dos for the past due to-dos set, right? Number 3 is we don't want you to have more than 100 people in that pipeline. Because what our experience, if you've got more than 100 people in there, then you start to lose your effectiveness. So what that means is that our agents have to consistently top grade their lead sources, their leads, right? So now, if they're out there prospecting, because if you've got 100 people in there, there's some people that aren't returning your phone call, there's some people that their motivation have changed, there's some people that you've tried to call 10 or 12 times, they won't follow up with you. So now you get a really hot lead come in, somebody that you think you are going to be able to convert from an open house or a sign call, an internet lead that's like wants to go see a property that day. So now they just top grade. They get rid of a lead that's no good so that they're still only focused on a set number of people. And then all the leads have to have e-alert set up for them. So if they're buyers, we know that they're getting automatic updates on listings. And if it's a seller, they've got to be set up to receive a home value notification. So we can track all those things. So every week, I've got a copy of it I could send you. I get a report, and it has the agents on our team, and it's got those categories, and it's got a check mark by it if they've done that, and it doesn't have anything in the box if they haven't done it. And I send it out to the whole group. So now everybody can see who has met the pipeline obligations and who has not met the pipeline obligation. So it's peer accountability. And I'll make comments, hey, good job to Joe, Mary, and Sue for having their pipelines up to date. The rest of you, I need you to spend some effort this week because this is your future income. Like, you need to be looking at these leads as cash, right? These are the people that are going to turn into your closed deals. If you're not managing that pipeline, you certainly don't need to be generating any more leads. Like, the first step is go back and work the people that you've already paid to generate. You with me? We got a couple of questions, if it's directly related to this. Otherwise, I've only got, I think, 1 or 2 more slides, and then we're going to open it up. So the next thing as we get into leverage, and as I said, leverage is the truth that will set you free. It requires you to think as a business owner as opposed to a salesperson. So when I say like where you are now and where you ultimately want to be can always, always, always be solved by a who. It's always a who question. Sometimes you need like a system or a tool, but the cool thing is if you go find the right who, they will implement the system or the tool. So it's always a who. So that's why learning to master leverage is really the key to building a bigger business and having a bigger life. I know this is hard to see. I had to fit everything on one slide, but you can take a picture of it, or John will share these slides with you guys. This is a snapshot of our organization. So you can see Allison as our Vice President of Sales and Operations. She has an inside sales manager as well as a marketing manager that reports to her. And then our inside sales manager has 2 virtual assistants that are really lead coordinators. So they're calling the leads that we have, verifying contact information, doing the things just to determine do we need to get them over to somebody that has a license.
Are they all agents?
Tristan, who's the inside sales manager, is a licensed agent. The virtual assistants are not licensed agents, but they're not doing sales. They're literally just customer support. So if somebody signs up for our website and an agent is not available to call them within 4 or 5 minutes, the VAs will, and they're just verifying contact information, asking them kind of what information would be helpful, seeing if they want to go see any properties, and then we get them over to an agent.
Right.
So they're kind of helping because, again, we generate a large number of leads and we only have 9 agents at this point. So we need some of those salaried people to help incubate and qualify those leads when there's not an agent available to get in and do that. You can see our outside sales team report to both Allison and myself. Allison did not come from a real estate sales background, so she's the one that's recruiting the agents, holding them accountable, doing their 401s on a weekly basis, but I'm still involved in coaching those agents. Part of the reason is because I want to spend time with them because I'm determining who's my next leader, who's the next person that is ready for an opportunity. So a lot of times if they get into a really sticky deal or they just need some help or they just want to be coached on what their next opportunity is, I'm still doing that as well. Mandy is our client care manager, so she runs kind of the contract to close operations client care division of our business. We have 2 additional client care specialists, Miriam and Alicia. Alicia's new, which is why we don't have a photo of her up there yet. And they're doing, the 3 of them are doing all of the contract to close. So listing coordination as well as all. So when we take a new listing, they're scheduling the stager, they're coordinating photos, they're doing any pre-market repairs, they're scheduling the photographer, they're inputting the listing online. When we get a contract executed, they're setting up the inspection, turning in paperwork, filling out green sheets. We really want the agents. The agents only are doing things, like they're showing the houses or doing the listing appointment, getting the contracts negotiated, and then they get involved in the inspection negotiation. They do that part, but our admin team does everything else from there. In addition to the 3 people, those 3 people are in my office, we also have two virtual assistants there as well. So we have 2 virtual assistants that are working on the lead incubation, lead coordinator side, and we have 2 virtual assistants that back up the client care team. What we use those virtual assistants for is anything that does not require a conversation with the cooperating agent or the client. If it's cooperating agent or the client, we don't want to introduce a bunch of different people and create confusion. So the only people that the client or the cooperating agent ever talks to is our agent or the client care manager that's assigned to that file. So that one. So, but the VAs, there's a million other things that have to be done, right? Green sheets and organizing all the documents and chasing down signatures and sending out template emails, the same email that you send out for every transaction, or scheduling the inspection, all those things that are just taskless. We leverage our VAs to do all that. So now what that does is it frees up our client care specialists to solve problems to keep the agents out of having to deal with them or to have the conversations with the client. We want them to be able to do higher value tasks. So that's how we leverage the VAs there. And then our most recent administrative hire was my executive assistant / personal assistant, Hannah. And she is the one that really runs my life at this point. Hannah has access to way more stuff than anybody should have access to. Like she has access to all my bank accounts, my credit cards, my email. She's at our house every couple days. She fills my car up with gas. She makes reservations for date night. She has to fill in for childcare every once in a while. She makes sure that I'm freed up to do, like something goes wrong at the house, I tell Hannah, and she's still learning our vendors, so I tell her who to call, and then she calls the person, schedules it. She goes to my house to make sure that she's there, manages it, and then pays for it when it's done. Well, I pay for it, but she writes the check for it, I guess I should say. And so she got all the things that I wanted to get off my plate is now her responsibility. It's what allows me to focus on. So like, I told you I would tell you some funny stories related to leverage that would make some of you think that I was crazy and some of you think that I was a genius. So I like outdoor stuff. I like to, I'm training for this triathlon, which means I like to cycle. I like to hike. We just bought this farm, so we've got like a 4-wheeler and all this other stuff now that I don't even really know how to service or maintain, but we've got it all now, right? And it requires upkeep and maintenance. So one of the things for me is I hate doing laundry. Like I refuse to do laundry, and I hate to put up laundry. Like that's one of the things that it's kind of like if I'm folding laundry, then I'm either in trouble with my wife and I had to do it because I left that alone, or like I'm desperate, like I have no clean underwear or something like that, which really means that somebody else didn't do what they were supposed to do. Not my wife. I'm not saying my wife. My wife doesn't do anything. I'm talking about like somebody that's like either the cleaning lady or our nanny or Hannah, right? Like I have a tier of people that it falls down to. The cleaning lady people are supposed to do it. The cleaning people don't do it. Yeah. This sounds crazy, but one of the challenges that I had was like I've got bike clothing and I've got socks and stuff for running and I've got like hiking clothing, and to our cleaning people it all looks the same, right? Like it's all just like there's no difference between a bike shirt and a running shirt. So I get ready to go for a run at 5 in the morning and I can't find like the running shirt that I want. I can't find any of my like these are some first world problems, right? I'm not saying that this is like what I'm trying to do for you guys is paint a picture of what leverage can look at. Like I realize I am not so ignorant or unself-aware that I realize that this is the most first world stuff that you could possibly imagine. But for me, this was an annoyance factor. I could never find we're going out to the farm, and I'm like, well, this isn't a running shirt, this is a hiking shirt, which is why I couldn't find it, or where is it? So we hired, and by we I mean Hannah hired an organization lady who came through, and she brought a team of like 3 or 4 people to my house, and they took everything out of all of my closets and they laid it out by sections. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And then we went through and we edited. Like I went through, and fortunately I'm a pretty quick decision maker, so I got rid of probably 60% of my stuff. I never wear that. I haven't worn that in a year. I don't need that, or it doesn't fit, or I hate that color. My mom gave it to me as a Christmas gift 2 years ago, and I didn't want to get rid of it. So we edit all that stuff out right now. So now I'm left with just the stuff that I want to keep. So then they go through and they organize it in different sets. But the problem for me is, and then they figure out where's it all going to go, right? Like where does the running stuff go? Where does the camping stuff go? Where does my work stuff go? And they put it all in all these organizations. Here's where it starts to get really crazy. For me though, but I still have the problem that not everybody knows that this is a work shirt, or this is like a nice t-shirt that I wear out for fun, and this is something that I would lounge around the house in, right? So I had that problem. So then they went and they gridded it all. They actually labeled all of these sections of my closet, and then Hannah had to label every one of my pieces of clothes. So right now, is there a on the back of the shirt? Yeah, so this is a C2, guys. This is a C2. So now, when the cleaning people come in, and they find this shirt, and they iron it, and they go to put it up, they walk into my closet, and there's actually a key to it. And then in each section it says C2, right? So now when I can't figure out what I want, I now have a system that I can hold somebody accountable to fulfilling in order for me to get there. So now we're starting to figure out who thinks I'm a genius and who thinks I'm crazy.
Let's be nice.
Well, I know where they're all I have a graph, it says on there you see Jewish pressure. The problem wasn't me knowing where I thought it should go, it was just everybody else knowing what in my mind what it is. So now every time I get a new piece of clothing, Hannah comes and I just set it out on the dresser, and I put a sticky note on top of it, and the next time that she's at our house, she irons on what it is and washes it and puts it in the right category.
Do you
So
have anything that like crosses over, like?
yeah, I just kind of decide. But again, like, I know where it is, so I know like, oh well,
Very
that's
specific.
I know the places that it could be. So so here's the crazy thing. I was listening to this podcast that Tim Ferriss did with this guy named Mr. Money Mustache, and it's a really cool podcast. But the most impactful thing that he said during that podcast to me was that I was listening to was that when he goes to spend money, he's always turning like, is this going to create more happiness? Is me spending the money on this going to create more happiness? And so when Tim Ferriss was asking about how he determined that, like what does that look like? It was normally the purchases that I make that create happiness are solving a problem or a frustration that I have.
Yeah.
It's not that it's like, oh, I want this new car, or it's like it's faster or something like that. You're gonna buy that and it might make you happy for a week or a couple days, but that's not gonna create prolonged happiness. What the purchases that we do, the things we make, are solving a problem or an issue that we have. So when I look at leverage in my life, whether it's domestic leverage around the house or a person on the team, it generally comes from me figuring out, like, I'm constantly getting drug into this area that I don't want to get drug into. Or I'm constantly having to do this job that I don't want to do anymore. Or I'm constantly having to search for where my housekeeper put my running socks. And because of that, like, I go out and I add leverage to that point so that I can stay focused on the things that I want to stay focused on. Gary told me a couple years ago when I was going through this big transition in my business that as you grow in your business, this idea of seventh level is kind of like rainbows and leprechauns. Like, I don't know too many people that have just ridden off into the sunset and are living some island and their business continues to grow. Most of the time, like, you're still there. And he used himself as an example. He said, look at me, like, I still show up every day. I'm still working hard. It's not that I've completely gone away. The difference is when you grow in your business, you get to spend more time doing the things that you want to do. That's the right that you earn as a business owner and as a mega agent. It's not that you earn the right to just go away and things continue to go, because I've seen people try to do that before and it typically doesn't work. It's just that, like, so for me, and honestly, like, I love what I do. I enjoy the people in my business. I enjoy the challenges that we face. I just didn't enjoy some of the things like going on listing appointments on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday night, or showing houses on the weekend, or dealing with calls after hours. So what I did was I earned the right to put other people into those positions so that I could spend more of my time doing the things that I want to do, and that is what leverage looks like. So the keys to leverage, I'm going to give you one or two things, and then we've got about an hour left for anybody that wants to stick around. We're going to just open it up. We'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. Is the big thing, if I was narrowing it down to one thing, is career visioning. If you're here this morning, you've already heard me say this, but you could probably stand to hear it again. It's career visioning. Gary tells us that if you want to get great at career visioning, you need to think about each time you take it as a grade. So if you take it at once, congratulations, you have a kindergartner's level of knowledge of career visioning. When you've taken it 12 times, you've got a high school diploma. When you've taken it 6 times, you've got your degree. You've taken it 18 times, you've got a doctorate level degree. So think about it like that. It's not something that you're going to take once and master it. It's going to take a lot of time on task over time. If there's one thing as your business grows that you should be spending 10,000 hours on, it is the career visioning process. It's going through and learning how to hire, lead, and manage people. And that's where I think a lot of agents never make that jump from really great agent to business owner.
I agree.
By the same token, there's probably people in this room, there's definitely people in this company that have no desire to grow a big team, that don't want to have it, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. You have to figure out what you want out of the business, where you want to be, and what part along the journey you're okay with stepping off the train on and maintaining, and be comfortable with that. I will tell you the reason that I chose to master career visioning, or to be on the path, I'm not a master, but I'm on that path of mastery for career, and the reason that I chose to continue to work on my leadership skills and to continue to grow and add people to my team is because when I had a highly productive small team, it still felt like a job. It did not feel like a business, because I was only one person away from getting that job back. When you have one listing agent and that listing agent gets sick or quits or gets another opportunity, you now become the listing agent again. When you've got one assistant and that assistant quits, you become the assistant. So for me, the further removed I could get from the jobs that I didn't want to be doing, the more it felt like a business. So if you share that belief, like, okay, I want a business, I don't want a job, and there's nothing wrong with having a job. I know incredibly successful real estate agents that are 25-year veterans. They're some of the best real estate agents I've ever met that still love getting up and working with a buyer and going on a listing presentation and teaching in their office. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And if you want more, if you want the bigger business, then it just takes different steps. It takes you learning more about leadership, because it's not the same skill sets that got you to be a great agent that are going to get you to become a great leader. So if you're on that path, career visioning and learning how to master leverage is the most critical step in that process. All right, so that, I believe, is the end of my scheduled programming at this point. So what I would love to do now is I would love to open it up, and if I can be a resource for you guys with challenges that you're experiencing with your own business, if you've hit a ceiling and you want to know what I think the solution is, if you are looking to grow, if you're, and again, like, this is not just business related. If you want to ask me more about my daily routine, or how I created my closet system, or any of those things that we talked about, there's nothing that's off the compensation. Like, if you want to know what some of these people make, whatever you guys want to talk about, this is y'all's time. I'll stick around. If all you guys want to leave and John and I can go hang out for a little, that's fine too. But if there are things that you guys want to know more about, or you have questions that are unanswered, this is your time to pick my brain. Yes, sir.
So is it Hannah?
My personal assistant is Hannah. Yep.
What was she doing before you found her, and how much does she cost?
Yep. So Hannah, so you've got proven talent and emerging talent. Do you guys know the difference between the two? So proven talent in the role, been there for a longer time. Emerging talent kind of rising up through the ranks. Hannah was kind of right in the middle there. Hannah had been a nanny and a house manager for two really successful attorneys in Atlanta. She actually moved to Nashville from Atlanta. She was kind of originally just their nanny, and then as the kids got older, she started doing more like running them around and a little bit of house management type of stuff. So she came from that background, but she did not have, now she's doing financial stuff for me. She's managing a lot more of our household than she was for them. She's managing my travel. She also filters all my emails. She responds to some of my email if she knows what needs to be done there. She passes along to other team members. So she came from that. She's definitely more of an emerging talent. And to me, that's like a salaried position. And for us in Nashville, it's about a $30,000 to $40,000 a year job. Initially. Now the cool thing is, that's year one. The more she takes off my plate, she can become invaluable to me, to where I would be, I might be willing to pay her double that 2 or 3 years from now if she's managing all of the, the bills and the finances and inputting our stuff into QuickBooks and some of the stuff that I was doing and really making the household run, and she knows all the things that need to be done. She stocks my car. She makes sure that when I get in the car, I have petty cash in the drawer if I need cash for something, that my gas tank is filled up, that I've got the type of gum that I like. By the way, I got all that from Ben Kinney. Ben Kinney has this checklist that his personal assistant goes through, and I just took that, and there's some of the things no, I don't really care about that, or I don't need that, but I do want this. My wife works full-time as well. She works for Cisco Systems, and she has a really important job kind of running she's kind of like the chief of staff for one of their SVPs, and so she does work from her house, which is nice. She telecommutes. We have a apartment above our garage that we built out when our second kid was born, so that's kind of like her world out there. Other than I get it from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. and that's when I go out and ride my bike and run on the treadmill and things like that. But so we also have a full-time nanny that's there from Monday through Friday from 8:30. She gets there at 8 a.m. and leaves at 6 p.m. And then on Wednesday, she stays until 8 p.m. so my wife and I can go out to dinner so we can have a date night once a week. And the cool thing about that is we are very hands-on parents. Like I want to be there. Like I don't miss baseball games. I don't miss, my son's playing t-ball right now for the first time. I don't miss like things at school, and one of us is always at doctor appointments. But having her there allows us to do that, because she not only takes care of the kids, she helps prep dinner, she makes sure that the housekeepers show up and answers questions for them, like she's there to receive deliveries or open the door if Hannah's not there. So those little pieces of leverage for us are what allow us to, when I come home at the end of the day, like I can have dinner, I can help bathe the kids, we can read bedtime stories, we can do all that sort of stuff, because we've got those other pieces in place.
So you're living your dream.
I'm living the dream.
Life worth living, right?
It really is, yep. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I had a business development question.
Yeah.
You were going through and looking at your org structure and your org chart. Now, did your organization take shape based on the needs and things that were going on with the agents? Like, oh, we need another ISA, or we need, another client care. How did that really take form? Did you have a strategy in place, or what?
So it's a living and breathing organism. It's going to change over time, and you should start with an idea of an ideal organization. Like you should have some framework based on the size of business that you want. You should begin with that end in mind, and you should kind of craft that structure based off of who you believe that you need. And I'll tell you from experience, that's going to change. Like who you believe you need before you've done it will adapt. But if you don't at least start with a good framework, then you risk missing a critical link. So you want to think through it to start with. Like, okay, I want to do 300 transactions. Well, based on average buyer agent productivity and how many listings, here's how many agents I think we need. Well, based off of that number of transactions in my market and the activities I want them to do, how many transactions can a really competent client care specialist do? Okay, well, based on that, how many admins am I going to need? And then when am I going to add each one? Okay, cool. Well, based off the number of deals I want to do, how many leads am I going to need? So then how many people, I'm going to add this number of agents, but as I'm adding agents, I'm probably going to need an inside salesperson or a virtual assistant to help coordinate those leads. So I had a pretty clear idea based on what my long-term goals were, as well as an idea from other teams that had big businesses, what I wanted to do. But you could take the top 100 agents in our company and you could put all of their organization charts up here and they would all look different. There's not a single one of them that would look the same. We've done this exercise before. It's like radically different. So some of it's going to be based on your ideal business. Some of it's going to be based on your lead gen sources, right? If you're doing all past client sphere of influence, you don't need an inside salesperson. If you're doing all of online lead stuff, you may not need other positions. You might need more inside sales and fewer agents, something like that. So it's going to depend, but yes, begin with the end in mind, plug some of those pieces in, go study other people's organization charts, put your ideal one together, and know when you're going to add those people, but also be flexible enough to know that it could change. So one of the things, I was listening to Tim Ferriss talk, and somebody asked him what his 5-year goal was or his 5-year plan, and he said he doesn't make one. He doesn't have a 5-year goal or a 5-year plan. He has a vision for his life, and he feels like the economy in the world is changing so quickly that to know what he's going to be doing 5 years from now is crazy. Like I kind of think that about our industry. As much as technology is trying to disrupt and as much thing is going on, for me to know what my business is going to look like 5 years from now, I don't have a crystal ball. So I know the things I want to be doing. So how does he evaluate it then? He said, as long as I have a clear purpose and vision for my life, I'm constantly evaluating, am I doing the things that I want to be doing, and am I moving myself closer to that vision and that purpose for my life? And if the answer is yes, then I go back and look at what I'm doing and I do more of that. Or if the answer is no, I say, well, what's preventing me from doing that? And I do less of that, or I get those things off my plate. Just kind of like what I was saying with leverage. And so, again, I don't know exactly what I'm going to be 5 years from now, but I know what I want to be remembered for. I know the types of activities that I want to be doing on an ongoing basis. And as long as I can evaluate that and make sure that I'm moving in the right direction, then I feel like I'm on target. Yes, ma'am, over here first.
Can we talk about the technology in terms of the CRM that you started off with when you were a one-man person and now where you guys are? How did you evolve through, having a likable system that everybody can conquer and
Yeah.
each other?
So, for me, I think I started off with Outlook. This is back in 2003, And then I got top producer at some point, and now we still leverage top producer some, but we run all of the leads and do all the lead incubation through Boomtown. I would tell you that one of the things that we talked about earlier today is the only thing I would give you as a cautionary tale is that the system that might work for one business isn't going to necessarily lead easily into the system for our next business. You may have to completely blow it up and do a totally different way of doing business. So it's not a natural progression, and by the same token, Boomtown is expensive. So if you're a brand new agent, you think at some point that you want to use Boomtown, but your main source of business right now is that online lead generation, you don't need to go and invest $2,000 or $3,000 a month to do that. You're going to lead with revenue. You're going to add that at the right time. But for me, when I make the decision on when to do something else, it was, well, when does it stop working? And is there a way that I can adapt it or change it to make it work, or have I outgrown the system? But the sooner that you realize that, the less chance you have of building something on a foundation that won't support it. Yes, sir.
What percent of your business is homeowners versus investors?
The majority of our business is homeowners. Now, some of those past clients, sphere of influence, like repeat and referral business, are builders that we get a certain number of deals from them. But we are not like I don't have any big subdivisions. Like we did
Well, I'm talking more investors, people that are buying
and selling rental property,
buying, flipping, buying, holding.
I would say less than 5%.
I've learned something I like you using the word leverage, and our team believes in, quit talking to everybody. Here's one example. Go to a closing with 2 closings back to back, same attorney. We walked out of there writing up 2 contracts to the seller of one property because we talked to him, and then found out the seller of the other property owns 40 properties, and we've already sold one and listed one.
Mm-hmm.
So and have 40 more to do. So if we hadn't asked, what are you doing? What else do you have? But the investor market, unlike the single family market, you can have 20 or 30 investors, and you're just spinning houses. Mm-hmm. This guy buys it. This guy sells it.
You're right.
This guy buys another one. This guy sells another one.
Yeah, working with investors is a great way to add leverage to grow quickly. My only cautionary tale, and the reason that we don't make that the majority of our focus, is because those people can, like, if you have all of your, like, I know people that were all builder and they had 1 or 2 builders,
right? And
then they had a falling out with that person, or something happened, or the market changed, right? The market shifted, and that was everything. So that's why we've traditionally focused on retail business. When the market went down, we did get into short sales, but that was a way for us to continue to add to our database. So I think what you're saying, I agree with 100%.
A lot of it has to do with your market, because I've studied this for 10 years of everybody who's coming into this city. People used to put on seminars in Tampa for Australians so they could come to Atlanta and buy property, because that's where you got your highest return. And then my customers from Atlanta were going to guess what cities? Cleveland and Detroit, because they could buy a property for $20,000 there, and the rents triple.
So I agree. I think leveraging investors, if that's something that you know about and you enjoy doing, is a great way to work smarter instead of harder. And I also know that as the market changes and there's fewer opportunities, sometimes those people stop buying as much. And that's why I like, for us, a balanced business where we don't have too much tied to any 1 or 2 people. But that's a great point. What else?
Somebody told me Nashville's like really high priced and one of the
hot market right
most
now.
demand. My son had a chance to live in Charlotte or Nashville, and he said it's like night and day.
Yeah, it's
price wise.
It's growing fast.
$500,000 for a little bitty condo.
In certain parts of the market, that's true. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm not for sure if you shared about profit sharing and with your business and how it's doing.
Yeah, that's one of the areas that, honestly, for me, becoming an OP was a way for me to improve upon that, and doing out and speaking and training. It has not been a huge focus of my business up until this point. So I'm certainly not the expert on that. I look at people like Linda McKissick and the Harkers and things like that are generating more money than I make with my entire real estate sales team, they're making because they focus on profit share. So they're probably people that are better at that than I am to learn from. And I will tell you, it's an incredible resource that we have from being with Keller Williams, something that every one of you should take advantage of.
That's the number one reason why I'm here.
Yeah, that's smart. That's a number of reasons a lot of people are here. So, and I think the bigger that your business gets, and the more that you spend time focusing on that, the more that you have to share. The more that you have to share, the more people you're going to attract. Yes, ma'am.
Well, and the other thing that I just learned today, actually, when we were in the class about how to get paid at closing, was that if you're working with an agent within the First Realty Group right here, that you can save a ton of money if you're making a lot of sales, because you're only going to be paying half of the FMLS, and that's a ton of money.
We don't have that.
Anyone in the room that's interested in talking to me, I'd like to talk with you.
Cool. Who else has questions about their business or something that we've talked about? Or I'm going to come here first and then we'll come back. Yes, ma'am.
So typically when you're running your team meetings or your individual meetings, how do those typically run for you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we do is we have an all-team meeting every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. It used to be at 11 a.m., but I have an OP call every Tuesday at 11 a.m. now. So we moved that to 10 a.m. And the format for that is we always start off with something that people are personally and professionally grateful for. So we started off like getting in the right mindset, like, all right, tell me something good, guys. What are you personally and professionally grateful for? So we start there. From there, we'll go through and I'll update on things that we talked about. So a system that our leadership team is working on, or a process that we're implementing, or something that's changed, or something that, like an issue that came up previously, we go through and we discuss all of those things. I always work to teach on something. So something about mindset or something about leadership. I've got my group there. I want them to have some group ahas, and those are great things for me to share a couple bullet points from a class that I went to, or something that I listened to, or a book that I read. So we always do that. We talk about the market. What are they seeing? What are their challenges? For the last year, it's been inventory. Like, oh, we got all these buyers, we don't have any inventory, and we're getting multiple offers. And so how do we deal with things like that? And how do we make our offers more competitive? Those sorts of conversations. The last part of that meeting is really where the magic happens. And what we started doing is a deal call. And we have a whiteboard. I've actually got a picture of it if you want to see it. I take a picture of it every week so I can kind of track what we're doing. And it's got certain key metrics on it. My phone's in my bag, otherwise I'd pull it out. It's got certain key metrics on it, and we know based on everybody's individual goals what we need to close on a monthly basis to stay on track for our annual goal. So we wanted to get better at forecasting so that as a business owner, I had an idea of like, hey, what's this month going to look like and what's next month? Before, it was like, man, until I got all the commission checks, because I deposit all our commission checks once a month at the end of the month, like until I got all those checks, I just had no idea what to expect. Like, am I going to make $10,000 this month, or am I going to make $100,000 this month? Like, it wasn't until the end. And as you're growing and you're scaling, you needed systems in place to figure out what's my pipeline look like. So what we do is at the beginning of the month, every person on our team goes through based on the people that they're working with, and they call a number of deals. I'm going to close 3 deals this month, or I think I'm going to close 2 deals this month, or I'm going to close 6 deals this month. And Allison, our VP of Sales and Operations, keeps note of that. So we go through and we add everybody's numbers up, and then based off the deals that they called, we come up with what our stretch goal is for that month. All right, you guys all, as of right now, first team meeting of the month, your deals, it looks like you guys have, if you close everybody you say you're going to close, or get everybody under contract you say you're going to close for that next month, you've got 24 people. All right, great. We're going to make our stretch goal 25, because not every one of those people are actually getting under contract, and there's also going to be some new people that are introduced into the system. And then every single week, that board shows how many do we have pending to close that next month. And then we redo that deal call. All right, our stretch goal is 25. It's the 15th. We've currently got 11 people pending to close next month. And then we go back through every member of the team. At the beginning of the month, you called 3 people. Yep, I got one of those under contract. I still feel good about my 2. Or, you know what, one of those people fell out, so instead of 3, it's going to be 2. Or, hey, I actually got 2 more people that are under like that are going to buy right away, so I'm going to move it up to 3 or 4. So every week we're going through and we're getting a snapshot of what does our pipeline look like for that next month. And then we're also figuring out, all right, based on what happened last month, we know where we are on track for our goal this month. Do we have any fallout? Like, so I think last time I looked at our board, we have 28 closings that are expected to happen in the month of May, which for us is about $10 million, like $10.5 million in closed volume, and it was going to be about $320,000 in GCI. So now that I know that, like, I'm feeling really good about the month of May, right? Based on our expenses and cost of sale, we should have net profit of well over $100,000 in the month of May. So now we're focused on June. So our goal at our last team meeting, we had, which was last Tuesday, we had 10 transactions pending for June. Our stretch goal for the month was to get to, I think, 27 or 28. When we did our deal call, based on what was already pending and what people were still expecting, we were still in that 27 to 28 mark. So what that allows us to do is like a 15th protocol, right? Like we get to the 15th of the month and we're not anywhere near where we wanted to be. What actions do we need to change? Because I can't control the outcomes, but I can control the actions and the activities. So what actions do I need to change in order to get people back on track so that we're not way off of our numbers? And again, those are not my goals. Those are the numbers that they set that combined our team goal. Yes, ma'am.
Well, everything you said is for a team and everything. I'm a neuro agent. I'm
Okay.
in my second year, and I would love to start my own team, but I don't know what steps to take, what to look for. I know I need to hire talent, but like getting an assistant first and so on, and because that gives you leverage. But how and when?
It's an awesome question. I love that because I know that you're not the only one in here that's kind of on that journey that's looking to build. So the first thing that you do is you create that lead gen plan that I talked about first. You get really clear on where am I, because until you do that, until you're generating more leads and more transactions that you can handle, you don't need an assistant, right? So once you get to that point, and I find with most agents, it's between 30 to 40 transactions a year. When they've been able to generate enough deals that they're on track to do, 30 plus deals a year, that's when they're ready to hire their first admin. Most of the time people wait too long and then they're hiring out of pain and they don't have the time available to train that person and put the systems in place. So get to that 30, start early, save the money so as you're starting to make money from your deals, be taking a percentage of that off the table into an account that's going to be your leverage account. When you get to that 30 deals, begin looking for that rock star assistant. Know that you're probably going to screw something up at somewhere along the way with hiring, and don't let that frustrate you. And take career visioning. Don't go hire someone until you've taken career visioning. And do that early. So as soon as you can afford comfortably to go take career visioning for the first time or the 2 times, go ahead and invest in it. That is the class that teaches you how to hire talent.
Was that
Through
Recruit
Keller
Select?
Williams. It used to be called Recruit Select. Now it's called Career Visioning. Yep. So you can go on to kwconnect.com. You can type in Career Visioning into the search bar. You can click on the link, and along the right-hand side, it shows all of the upcoming career visioning classes that are coming up, right? So you can go in there and you can see when's the next career visioning class that's near me, or when's one that's near a family member or a friend that I can go travel to and take that class. That's really the next step. So then you hire that first assistant and you do the same thing. You spend the time that you were spending doing the activities that now the assistant is doing, lead generating, and you keep doing that until even with the assistant, you have so many deals that you can't service all those, and that's when you go and you hire your first buyer's agent or showing special. So really at this point, like again, let's keep it simple. The first thing is master the lead generation plan. Get on where you're on track to do, you're consistently closing 3 deals a month. And as you're getting close to that, go take career visioning. And once you take career visioning, begin to look for that assistant. And the one mistake that I see people make when they're hiring their first assistant is they're figuring out like what's the least amount that I can pay somebody to get somebody with the pulse in the office. Because what I've found, and you guys tell me if it's different in your market, The difference between somebody who's awful versus somebody who's outstanding is probably only $15,000 to $20,000. If you can get somebody that'll fog a mirror for $24,000, you could probably get somebody awesome for $45,000, right? So 25 grand for most of you guys, we're talking about 2 transactions. 2 or 3 transactions at your average sales price is going to get you that additional $20,000 to $25,000. And will a person who's outstanding not going to help you get 2 more deals versus somebody who's average or below average? The answer is yes. Got it? Yes, ma'am.
Aaron, in your office, how many agents are there?
In the market center,
Yeah, in the market center.
we have 300 agents in the market center that I'm in.
Okay, so that 100,000 that you were talking about on the profit, let's say you made 100,000
For this month, you're
that's
saying.
for the month. That's divided 50% to the owners, right?
No,
That's
this is
his
after.
team.
This is my team, my sales team. That's $100,000 after paying the market center, after paying cap, and after paying my agents.
So what do they get, or is that what you get?
So I said, so keep in mind, if we go back, I said if we close these 28 transactions that we have on the book, it's $320,000 of total commission. Not $100,000 of total commission. $320,000 of GCI is what my team. Now we're gonna have deals that fall through. So like if you look at my month, maybe it's $275 at the end of the month or
Right.
something like that. So out of that, I've got to pay my agents on the team. They're split.
Right.
And that, like, we pay out 40% on a buyer deal, 25% on a listing. So, my average cost of sale, and then we also pay out more if they self-generate a deal, like if they have a past sphere of influence, they can make in the 55 to 65% range on those deals. So my average cost of sale ends up being around 40%. So
Okay.
now you take that 325,000 and you take out 40% of that, and then out of that I've got all my expenses, right? My salaries, my admin, our marketing, rent, all of those things. Our expenses are around $60,000 a month.
Uh-huh.
So once I back that out, what's left is my profit as the owner of my team.
Right.
And so that, at a month like this, we should be able to do $100,000 of profit if we keep in that same range, because I know my expenses and I know my cost of sale.
So
That's a
you
really
ended
good
up
month
getting,
for us.
if I'm understanding it right, you ended up with if that given those numbers, you would have ended up with 40 for the month for you.
No,
No, it was
100.
300,000 total.
No, the
that
100,
month.
yeah, but we were backing out this other stuff.
No, so take 40. So take 320,000. What's 40% of 320,000? Somebody tell me that number. I can't do math in my head.
You good, you good. You don't have to explain.
Yeah. And
260
then-
something.
Yeah.
130.
So take that 320,000, back out 120,000 out of that. So
Yeah.
now I'm left with whatever that is.
200.
Right, 200. So now I take out $60,000 of my expenses, and I'm left with 120 or 140 or something.
140.
Yeah. So that would be the net profit to me.
Right.
Over $1 million. something
And
like
then
that.
what do
So
you?
then I just have to pay taxes out of that. I got to pay the IRS. That's it. I've
So
already
you
paid.
still would get the
Yeah, I've already paid splits to the market center. That's all cost of sale. That's all factored into that 40 to 45% that I pay out. That's the money I pay to the market center and the money I pay to the agents. So that's net profit.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you. That was it. Now we don't. Every month doesn't look like that, right?
No,
Like,
I know, I was just.
in January,
I just wanted to jump on
I
that
still
number.
in January I still have $60,000 or $70,000 of expenses. So I might barely break even in a month like that, but in months like this.
I
So
understand that.
last
Yeah.
year our sales team net profit made just over $600,000 just from the sales team. Yes, ma'am.
So earlier you were talking about accountability, and you said, average agent does, 2 to 3 deals a month, and you said if they don't do that and they're not hitting their goals, you'll leave them on the team, right? But you won't spend time with them. So my question is, what's the minimum that they have to do to stay on the team? And then also there has to be some sort of culture requirement, right?
Right. So the most important thing to me is that they're operating out of integrity, that they're meeting our mission, that they're not, doing things that could get me in trouble legally, that they're good people, and that they fit within the culture. That's point number one. I don't care how much business you're doing, if you're not meeting that, we would rather you.
Gotcha.
From there, our production standards is probably in that, if you're doing 18 deals a year, if you're doing a deal and a half a month, and that's meeting your goal, I can't get to my goals with a team full of people only doing 18 deals a month, but I'm going to have a mix. I'm going to have some people that's their first year, maybe they only do 12 or 14 this year, but they're on track to do 18. I've got one girl who's, already done 40 deals this year. So she'll probably do 80 deals this year. She'll probably make $275,000. So I'm going to have a little bit of both. But if they're in integrity, they're hardworking, they're providing good service, they're meeting their goals, then they'd have to drop well below that before I'd be willing. And not like it's one thing if they had a rough first year, because we might have people their first year that maybe they started midway through the year and there's just a ramp up time, right? So as long as they're doing the actions, because again, all I can hold them accountable is the activities, then they can they're valuable to us. I need people that only want to do a couple, because they're not hungry for as many leads, but yet they're still providing great service. They're filling in a stopgap for me. That's the benefit of having a bigger team like that.
As
I go
long
here and
as
then I'm
they're
going to go in the
not
back.
taking your time.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Do you spend, does your team do a lot of client events and that sort of thing?
We do one client event a quarter right now. And we typically do like a happy hour. Last year we did a Nashville Sounds game. We've done like movies in the park where I rent like a big blow up movie screen and have food trucks come. And I really do that for my agents. I don't care about that stuff. And I don't even know that our clients really care about it that much. But I do know that I couldn't get my agents to call the Sphere. They were like frustrated, like they didn't want to pick up the phone. As soon as I did a happy hour, or as soon as I did like a movie night, like they had an easy reason to call. Like they wanted to call and invite them to a party. So for me, and I split the cost of it with like our lender and our title company, so we can do an awesome happy hour that might cost 10 or 12 grand. It might only cost me $3,000, and if it got all of my agents to call through our entire Sphere and bring them out, and it got 100 of our clients there, totally worth the expense for me.
And you split it with the title company.
Title and the mortgage company, yeah, we share the cost of that.
Yeah.
For those things.
That's curious.
Yeah, in the back, in the pink, yes sir.
So from a scalability standpoint, two things. One is when a new agent comes onto your team, are you teaching them scripts, dialogues, and then they move into production? Like Lynn Sloke, and everybody comes in and they've got to basically be an ISA for 90 to 120 days, and they graduate to a buyer's agent. Do you do that? And then the second piece is, I handle majority listings on the team. We have buyer's agents. From a scalability factor, it seems like they get kind of stuck into what I call the single agent mode, because they lead generate and get business, and then they service the business, but then the lead generation falls off. So that leads me to the next question is, how quickly did you move to an ISA model to be able to further nurture those leads?
I don't, we just go get more agents. So okay. if I have too many leads that the agents can't handle because they're in that cycle, we do one of two things. We just go get more agents.
Okay.
I don't want to have I don't want to have as many ISAs because those are salaries that I have to pay. I'd rather have agents that are out there generating those leads, because in my experience, the ISA role is a hard role. Like that is not, that is the one role on our team that I would be miserable with, I think. So it's hard, right? You're on the phone all day. By the same token, if I have enough agents, even if they're only lead generating a couple hours a day, if there's enough of them, they can get back to all those leads. So that's the model that I've gone for. But I still need ISAs because we still have to have a stopgap. I still am not willing to let leads go. So for me, I've decided I'd rather have a fewer number of ISAs and virtual assistant lead coordinators and grow the agent base and let them work those leads. That's how it's worked on my team.
You just keep your ISA base smaller, so when you do have those fluxes, they can
exactly right.
Nurturing that the other agents are missing.
Yeah, we're not having new leads that fall through the cracks and don't get called if they're on there. But it also, and I realized okay, we're not getting to our leads quick enough. I need to ramp up my agents. That doesn't happen overnight. So the ISAs are more of a stopgap, not where we don't ultimately want to have 20 ISAs. I would love to have 20 or 30 agents, but I don't have a goal to have 20 or 30 ISAs. Because it's a position that, in my experience, turns over a lot more frequently. It's a longer ramp-up period, and unless you're paying higher base salaries, it takes them so long to build a pipeline that they're getting 5 or 10% off those deals. It's for me, and it may just be a limiting belief, I haven't found that to be as sustainable as finding an agent, teaching them how to lead generate, letting them ramp up, knowing that they're going to have some ebbs and flows, and that's why I'm going to have more of them.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
How many do you need? Sorry,
Go ahead. Finish your question, then I'll come
finish
here.
that one. So we do somewhere we only allow 100 leads per account, and have what we call a pond, and they can fish.
Yep.
They always have to replace. Question is, you called it a to-do list. I'm assuming it's just an action plan.
That's right.
each lead, which I'm assuming could be a text, email, call.
Yep.
That's an
You
action.
have to have
plan.
some
You say
sort of
that.
activity set. They've either got to do a call or send an email or have their next call made so that I know that they haven't forgotten about that person.
So each lead within their 100 or tagged to an
Has
action
to have an
plan.
activity, not an action plan that just auto generates. Like, because we're gonna send them through initially like a 10 days of pain or bombarding them with info, but after that, these are the people that they've converted. So once they've converted to them, they might be on an auto drip plan for new listings, but I don't need to be sending them canned emails and text. We need to be dialing into what they really need, so they're keeping record of all their conversations. It's like, oh, I talked to Sue 2 weeks ago and she told me to call her in 3 weeks, but if I don't have that call set up so I know when to do it, I'm gonna forget to do
So
that.
these are follow-up tasks.
They're
tag
follow-up
within the
tasks
system
based
that
on that
notify the
specific
agent.
client, based on their time frame.
Okay.
It's not like, oh, we call everybody every 30 days. No, it's like we might call some people every day, and we might call some people once every 3 months because they're not not moving until they retire 3 years from now. We don't need to call that person once a week, but if we call the hot lead that's going to buy in the next 30 days once a month, we got a chance that we're going to miss out on them. So it's tailored to that person's specific needs. Yes, sir.
Are you willing to share like your buyer split or listing?
Yeah, absolutely. I talked about that a little bit before. So
You did? Okay, I'm sorry.
40% on the buyers if it's a team lead. So if it's a lead that the team generates or one of our online leads or something like that, it's 40%. On the listings, it's 25% because listings are more scalable, right? Like I've got more costs with sellers, and my team members can also work 2 or 3 listings in the time that it would take them to work one buyer. So we've got 25% on the sellers, 40% on the buyers. And then if it's a deal that they self-generate, we pay them 55% on sellers and 40%, 55% on buyers and 40% on sellers. So they basically get a 15% bump. And then once they do
The
8,
bumps for what?
for if they self-generate that
Oh,
deal
personal
themselves.
referral.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Our team deals never change; those always stay at the 40 and the 25. But them, I used to not do that, and you hear people argue vehemently both ways. Like, I'd never pay more for their self-generated deals because they should just be willing to do that as a part of the team member. That's how we used to do it, and I get it. But they weren't being like, why would they go out and work hard to self-generate deals? Those are deals that don't cost me anything, and I would pay any one of you guys 25% if you sent
It
me a deal.
deserves more, yeah,
Yeah.
you give a stranger that.
So why wouldn't I do that for them? So and then extra 15% on their own deals, and then once they've done 8 of their own personal deals in any rolling 12-month period, they get another 10% bump. So they can get up to 65% on the buyer deals and up to 55%
Is it
on the seller
retroactive?
deals.
No.
They don't have to do that every year, just once
Okay.
they've done it once, that's their new split just for their own personal sphere deals, and then my deals always stay the same.
For
And
that
that's
year
why-
or perpetual?
No,
Okay.
here.
Oh.
Rolling 12.
Rolling 12, once they've done it once in a rolling 12, they keep that higher split.
Oh.
You had a question?
Yeah, so do you pay your licensed people and your unlicensed people if they bring a listing? Like, do you pay them? Or
So here's the other thing. My agents can work with buyers and sellers.
Oh.
I don't make them only. So why did I do that, right? I used to be super focused, only want people. I tend to make my decisions because of some pain that I've experienced and something that didn't work out for me. So before, when I thought, now we have 2 agents that take the majority of our listings. Like if it's a listing that comes from me or my sphere or a builder, those 2 work with the majority of those sellers. However, if in the course of their prospecting, they generate a seller or they're following up on their home value leads, as long as they have mastered the listing presentation and they've shadowed one of our experienced listing agents on a minimum of, I think it's 7 or 10 listings, they can then go take that listing themselves. Here's why I did that. One listing agent could probably handle 100 listings in a year.
Yeah.
Well, we only did 253 total transactions, and 60% of those were sellers. 60% of those were buyers, which means that we might have only had 100 listings. So for me, if I only let one person take all those listings, like if I paid, because the model is you pay them a lower salary, or you pay them like a $60,000 salary, and then you pay them 10% or something like that. The problem is, in order for them to make good money, they've got to be doing 100 to 125 listings, which means at the volume of listings that I'm currently at, I only have enough listings for one person, which means until I double my listing flow, I don't have any repetition in that role on my team. So for me, instead of like, that's not an overnight thing. I'm not going to next year all of a sudden go and do 250 listings most likely. So I changed it and said, no, I'll let you work with buyers and sellers. I'm going to give most of you my direct listings. So now if one of those key listing people leaves, I've got other people that have been taking listings. It's easier for me to plug them into that role, and now I'm not as close to having to get the job back. That's the benefit of having a bigger business to me. I'm constantly focused on how many people away from the job can I get.
Yeah, see, that's smart.
Yes, ma'am.
The question you might have answered before, and I didn't get it, but, how many, agents do you have before, new agents that bring in new talent, before you bring in another aide, someone to assist?
For us, it's not based off of agents, it's based off of average closed transactions.
Average close, how many
So,
average close?
so for us, like I know that a good assistant in our model, because we heavily leverage out the agent, so every team's going to be different. Like
Yeah.
Ben Kinney's team, his agents do most of the contract to close work. The assistants really only do like paperwork type of stuff and setting up a couple of things. The agents are the ones scheduling the appointments and putting the signs out. So he'll pay a higher split to the agent than I might pay, but put more of those tasks back on the agent to do. For us, we pay him a little bit lower, and neither one is right or wrong. Like typically I end up doing what Ben tells me to do later, like he's ended up being right. For us, this is what we're doing right now, which means that my assistants have to be able to do more. So his assistants might be able to close, 40 deals in a month, where my assistants might only comfortably be able to do 12 to 15. So once we got to the point that we were averaging, 20 a month, that was enough for two. As we're pushing towards 30 a month, I went ahead and pre-hired a third one. So we're not to the point where they're totally maxed out. My goal is to always hire a little bit ahead of time.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to sacrifice that profitability. Like I could be making more profit if I waited longer, but I would rather sacrifice the profitability, get the next person in place, so that as we're growing, we're not as likely to blow up the system.
One, that was a two-part question, I only did one part. The second part of it is, I know there's an attrition rate in the business as it goes with agents, that they kind of move back and forth. So, we know what that is, and that's everyone. But what's the attrition rate with the people that support the offices? What percentage? I know it's 30% on the other. What's the
We have lower
attrition?
turnover of our admin because they're a different personality, like they're a different behavioral profile, right? Though where your agent is more like the grass is always greener on the other side, they're always looking for the next opportunity. They're motivated by more. A lot of times oftentimes the operations people are motivated by consistency, stable income, environment, things like that. So I found that if we treat those people right and we pay them an above average wage, then we can retain them for a longer period of time.
So you
I
have
think
a
you
lower,
could also
you have a better retention rate on your assistants because you're paying them more, is what you're saying.
maybe than other teams do. Yeah,
Yeah,
I would say
okay.
that's right. Yeah, we're willing to pay a little bit of a premium to get good quality people, so that they couldn't just go to any other team and make the same amount of money. Most
Exactly.
people, most of the teams are not going to be willing to pay my people what I'd be willing to
I
pay
like
them.
it, yeah, so thank you.
Yes, sir.
Seems like, you're very cognizant of managed growth, and I've talked to a lot of people before the crash, had big teams, and you get to a point where you're involved in too much management. It seems like you feel you can make enough money with 12 agents and so many assistants. It's not like you're saying to yourself, I gotta have 50 agents.
No, I think I am saying to myself, I want to have 50 agents. What I'm saying to myself is I'm not gonna. It doesn't have to be today. I'm going to be smart about the growth.
Right.
I'm going to make sure that I scale it properly.
Manage growth.
But I do, like, for me to get to where I want to go, like, I need more people. There's no question. Now I have a bigger bench of leadership. Now I've got more talent for other opportunities that I have. So make no mistake, like, I want a big organization, but I don't want it at the risk of just people for people's sake.
Right,
I want
Or your
smart
personal
growth.
dream, or your
Right.
personal dream,
That's right.
yeah, cause it sounds like with
Yeah.
your family and
Yeah.
whatever you
I'm not
got it
willing
all
to
worked.
sacrifice time away from my kids. I'm not
Yeah.
willing to work on the weekend. Like we want to go to our farm every weekend. I'm not going to sacrifice that for growth.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to put people in place that are going to manage the people that we bring on, and I'm only going to do it when the business supports it. But as
Right.
long as I'm doing that, make
Then
no
you
mistake,
have no
I still
problem.
want to get big. Big is
Right.
not bad.
Right, no, never.
But there's some point where
There isn't a point where there is a
your
point.
which, by growing this big, you're only making it that much more, so it makes more sense.
I don't know that that's true. I think that yes, the margins get lower, but I would rather have a bigger business with lower margins than me having to be the one doing the work with higher margins.
Me too.
So
Yeah.
I'd rather have 100 people netting 20% of the gross commission income than 8 or 10 people netting 40%. Because the math still works out to be a lot more money, and one feels much more like a business where the other one still feels like a job.
I agree with you, that is it's a mentality.
Yeah.
Yes,
You had a question?
mentality.
Did you ever hear us?
No, I'm just listening.
No, good. Who else? We still got a little bit of
I have
time.
one
Has
last
some
question. I feel like I'm
questions.
asking a
Yeah,
thousand.
but you,
She has a big team, go
Yes,
ahead,
she
ask
does.
questions.
Ask away.
So when you were talking about the lead pipeline standards and holding them accountable to what is a nurturer, and they have those 100 in there and they have a task assigned, who goes in there every day and makes sure that's there? Is that your VA?
Yep. The VAs do it, and we do it once a week. We send out that Excel spreadsheet, and it has everybody's name, and it's like, what areas are you deficient in? And we do the
It's like a
same thing for
checklist.
outbound lead prospecting. So, like the new agents have to do a minimum of 5 hours of outbound dialing a week. So a minimum of an hour a day. What I found is that for us saying you got to do 2 hours of lead gen a day or 3 hours of lead gen a day didn't work because I can't measure it. Like people, oh yeah, I was in the office from 9 to 12 doing lead gen. Well, I don't know if they were playing games on their phone or looking through social media or they called 2 people and then went and chatted in the water cooler for 20 minutes. I can only hold people accountable to things that I can measure. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
So what I do is I can measure time on the dialer. So what I found was, okay, if I make sure that they're doing at least 5 hours a week of dial time, then they're probably going to have to do another hour or so of lead management if they're keeping their pipelines in place. So that's how I ensured that they were doing 2 to 3 hours a day of lead gen and lead follow-up. And then once they get to a certain point, and they're getting deals from their sphere, and they've got a big pipeline, we can loosen up on those restrictions. Again, as long as they're meeting their goals, I'm not there to whip them into doing something if they can do it a smarter and easier way. I just know that as an agent ramping up, getting in there early on, that's the quickest way to get them into productivity. Yes, sir.
I know you mentioned that 24% of your business was online, and do you have a company or a company would recommend that you use?
Comes from a couple different sources. One is Boomtown, so we do pay pay-per-click leads, which is basically just registrations. We do pay some money to Zillow. I think we pay about $1,000 a month for Zillow leads. We do bold leads, which are home valuation. We market those through Facebook. We generate probably 400, 500 leads a month through our bold leads. And then we have a couple other sources. I don't even know all of them, but they're like the referral, like you sign up and they send you referrals every once in a while. And we've experimented with a couple of different ones. Allison would know what they are if she were here. But the big ones would be Boomtown and Bold Leads would be our top 2. And then you have like your Zillow and your Trulia. And then we have a bunch of ancillary ones that might create a couple leads a month here or there.
How much total are you paying on that? What'd you say?
For online,
Ballpark.
just for
All of it.
online or for all of our leads?
No, just for online.
If I had my computer, I could actually, like I have a P&L, like we run a really tight P&L, so I could show you exactly what it is. If I had to guess, because some of the lead sources we don't pay for, we just pay a referral fee for.
Yeah,
Like,
on
oh,
that whole
like the 2x referrals or whatever. Like, oh, you take this, they're free, but we'll pay you a 25% referral fee when we close it. So they're like, we pay for the Google pay-per-click, we pay for the Boomtown platform, we pay for the bold leads. It's probably in the, I could be off here, but I would guess that it's probably, and then we have our lender paid for part of it as well. But the portion that we pay for is probably in the $3,000 to $5,000 a month
That's
range.
what I figured, yeah.
you were gonna ask another question.
That's a lot.
Yes, what was
You
your
were,
other question?
you were about to.
Aaron, I'm very
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can't
Did you have something? You came up. Did you come to sit?
No, I'm just.
I like having
She's
nice
taking
ladies.
care of us. Hey, I'll sit next.
She's
to
our,
her.
she's our
And
productivity.
you know,
Yeah.
I have
gotta-
to say, I
I'll
give
go.
Fiona, I've just met her, a compliment. We were in her office, and I love the way that you focus. Because she needs to get, she knows the way she needs to hear something in order to be able to generate the right result.
a great productivity
And she
coach.
knows that it's gonna take a lot longer if you let someone else do it, and she knows exactly how to
That's
pull you
awesome.
right back on purpose.
Yeah.
I love it.
Did you have something else that I answered your questions on?
I think I've asked a lot.
Okay.
I know
Compensation.
you had mentioned, well, your top, do you ever share with your top 3 books that you would recommend?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a great question. I'm gonna think about it for a second. Well, I'll say the first 2 are pretty is MREA and The One Thing.
Okay.
So getting outside of that a little bit, because you already know those.
She said give you 5.
That's
An additional 3.
that's what I was gonna say. So let me give you a couple more because you should already know that.
Yeah.
The next one is Grit.
Yes.
Angela Duckworth.
about that.
Yeah, that's an awesome one. That's a great one. I think Good to Great is like one of those oldies but goodies. Jim Collins is one that kind of that was the first leadership management book that I
Good to
ever
great.
Jim
Good to
Collins.
yeah ever read. And let's see, what else have I read recently? Gary had us read. I should just pull up my Amazon account and see, but I think Grit is a great one. Good to Great is a great one. The Automatic Customer is another one that I read last year that's really good. It's about creating like recurring revenue and thinking about your business more as like a platform. That's another really great one.
Think and Grow Rich
Growth
by
Hacker.
Napoleon Hill.
What was that?
Growth Hacker is another good one. Yeah, Think and Grow Rich. Is that what we said, Napoleon?
Think and Grow Rich by
I'm still trying to get
Napoleon Hill. I
to
delivered papers
That one's
to
Yeah.
a publisher at 9 years old.
Yep, it's a
It
good
changed
one.
my life.
What was the last book you just?
Growth hacker.
Growth Hacker.
Growth hacker.
Yep, is another good one. These are some. I'm trying to think of some ones that you hadn't heard of before. There's another
Did
one
you have
for.
Tap Into?
It's either the 21 or 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing.
21.
Okay, 21
Yeah.
Immutable Laws of
Yeah,
Marketing.
right.
Gary made us read that last year, and it's like an old book. That
Yes,
like
it is.
I started reading, I was like, this. I had trouble getting into it, but it's a really good one.
Is it, are you saying refutable? Are you saying?
Irrefutable, isn't it?
Immutable.
Immutable.
Immutable. Yeah, I believe it's immutable.
That's
Yeah,
a tough
that's a
one.
really
What
good one.
irrefutable?
Still a big word.
Did you ever tap into the 7
the tipping
levels of
point and
communication?
Blink
The
is
I have not read the 7 levels of communication, but I do know that's a good one, and I have read Blink, and that's another
Yeah.
great one. Yeah, Blink is
I'm
a
a
good one.
voracious reader. I used to read a lot.
I believe it. In the
Everyone
back,
else
Do
have
you
a
have some
question.
C in your profile?
do I have some C? You know, I like Vector 4. I'm kind of a midline Vector 4, so I can ratchet it up or I can ratchet it down. I'm definitely not like I have a lot of like low Vector 4s on my team that are like anarchists, like they hate rules, they hate anything to do that. I am not that. I'm an only child and I'm a first child, so I'm very much like a rule follower. And push to the extreme, like I can go the other direction too. So I like, if you know much about behavioral profiles, like I am highly assertive, like so I'm a super high Vector 1. I'm very, very intense and assertive, and I'm very, very low on like patience. So I'm a super low Vector 3. So those are my ones that I can't move. Like I'm not going to come across most of the time as a patient person. I'm not going to come across as somebody who's reserved and not as assertive. But like sociability, and like a Vector 4 or a C, I'm kind of in the middle of. So you will see times where I get like super in the weeds and detail oriented and plug into systems. And there's other times where I like to back up and be really big picture.
Okay. I was just curious. By the way, I've got 2 stars in my Vector 3, which means I'm in the 1%
Yeah.
population
Yep.
for lack of.
Yep, I'm a 1 asterisk. I'm a 1 asterisk Vector 3. So Gary's funny. Like Gary's a high 1, high 4, right? And he's got an asterisk on both. He told us recently, he's like, I have what you call an SOB graph, like because
Indeed.
he's not super social, but he's really, really really assertive and very, very like he wants everything done right now, immediately, and it also has to be perfect. Like it has to be right because
Wow.
So he's like, yeah, that's
His
and that's why it's he's like, yeah, I have that because he's not how where you take like a Mark Willis or you take like a John Davis. And they are like highly social, which Gary's not. So they can solve. Like if you've ever met Mark Willis, like Mark Willis is one of those people like he can make you feel like you're the only person. Like I've spent
Yeah.
a lot of time. I was like, he thinks I'm incredible. Like I love this guy. I want to spend. Where Gary, you have to get to know him before you realize how much he cares. You might mistake yourself for like that he doesn't care about people if you just like saw him in passing. But what you realize when you get to know him is he does at a really, really high level. He's just very purposeful about it.
Gotcha. The question I was just interested in that is, at what point in your, I mean, you seem, two questions actually. One, how do you pick the right coach for you in the level of business that you're at? And then two is, at what point in your business, it seems like you can get to a point where, say you're teetering, you start flatlining at like 70 transactions, whatever it was for you. What was it that led to your next breakthrough? Was it a person? Was it a system? What?
Those are great questions. I'm going to answer the coach one first. So the coach one, my experience is when you're starting out and you're new, you don't have to have a mega agent. All you need to do is have somebody that will hold you accountable to doing the right things. And at that point, like it's super simple. The right things are not complicated, right? So that's number one. As your business grows, you need somebody who's been there and done that. Maybe not to the level that you want to go, but to some level. And then it gets to a point to where, for me, it's less about them having built a big team. It's more their understanding of like leadership development, organizational development. Have they been involved in a bigger business? Things like that. And so I've found that over time, your coach is going to change. Like for me, it's typically every 2 or 3 years. Every 2 or 3 years, because what happens is like they kind of become a friend, and then they're not providing the same level of accountability, and they're letting you off easily. And so it needs to change through that. The second question that you asked me is those inflection points. And there's the interesting thing, this may, it's not just one. You're going to hit several of those inflection points at different points. And sometimes it's different things that you need, but I would say almost always it is a person. It's a who question. Like you hit that inflection point, and like I said earlier, it may be a system or a tool that you need, but the right person can bring that system and tool in. Now you might hit your first inflection point before you've got the budget to go put in that system or that tool, so you may have to go do that the first couple times. But I think as you get bigger, it's almost always a who.
It's funny, I've been in real estate, well, I mean, I've been longer, but 3 years really as a real estate agent. As a legal real estate agent. I was always legal. But anyway, and I first met the real procuring agent for me was Sean Rawls. And
as he was for a lot of people.
Yeah, but I didn't even know who he was or whatever, other than someone said, you need to meet this guy. And so I meet him, and of course I almost went to work with him, but he left right then. It was just, it was right then. So I was going to go in because of him. And then I thought, I think I'm pretty hot stuff, but, I'm going to be nothing in this organization, unless I hit the right person. So I went off and I realized that I needed to understand the ropes of how the real estate industry works, rec and all that stuff. Because I'm more of I would say I'm a creative strategist, social person, if I had to describe myself.
I can see that.
So when we had another challenge, Jim and I, it was like there was no other thought in my head but Keller Williams. And it had nothing, at that point, it had nothing to do with Sean Rawls. It had to do with what I saw.
It's oftentimes with Keller Williams, it's a particular person that attracts you to the company, but it's the systems and the models and the education and the culture that keep you with the company.
And so I think the main word is culture.
Yeah,
the culture.
And that really plays true with regardless of what level you're at. I think is that coming in, even if you're going to be a small fish in a big pond, what better way to grow by putting yourself around people that are going to push you to reach a higher level.
And there's one other thing I wanted to say is that Deborah Harris, who is our procuring agent, okay,
Is your sponsor.
I never even met her, but I was so impressed with what she did when she and I encountered each other on this other deal. that when I said something to her, she said, well, I'm picking you up right now, boom, like that.
That's
And
awesome.
she didn't even know me, she
Yeah.
knew nothing about me.
Yeah.
And of course, I just said, well, you know what, now it's time for Keller Williams, and I just, it was like that easy.
Well, we have to
Cut
close
it
it
off?
down.
Thank you guys, only the
Thank
few
you.
remaining
Yeah.
people here, thank you guys for
Quite
sticking around.
illuminating.
And you know what, anyone that's left missed it, 'cause you
Well,
you're
I
great.
appreciate you guys staying here, this is awesome. Joseph?
Thank you for
Yeah,
knowledge.
absolutely, thanks for being
Motivation.
here, man, yeah, you're awesome, you have some great friends.
So- No, he hasn't.
Well, good,
But he's
good.
never worn that shirt before, right?
Yeah, that's a good looking shirt, I like it.
Thank you.
It's me,
Yeah.
there's two people.
I like it, looking sharp.
Thanks.
I wanna give you a hug.
Yes, ma'am, I'll take hugs,
Oh, you are
absolutely.
something.
Thank you so much for being here.
Well, I really enjoyed it.
Well, good, I'm glad.
You remind me of my
Pleasure to meet you.
brother, my
Oh,
baby
cool.
brother.
That's awesome. I'll take it.
Thank you
That's
so